Chapter 933. Shi Tianhao activated the Purple Crown of Ascension, and the lightning-type spirit power contained in it immediately merged with the rich magnetic force in the essence magnetic steel vein, producing a terrifying resonance. Duo! Shi Tianhao bellowed, and a thick pillar of air that seemed to be clear yet turbid shot out from the top of his body. After wrapping around his body, it directly turned into a huge primordial Tai Chi diagram. In the Tai Chi diagram, there were countless giant beasts floating up and down, and an ancient primordial aura emanated. The Purple Crown of Ascension merged with Shi Tianhao's essence soul incarnation, and rolling lightning flashed continuously, triggering a massive amount of magnetic force in the essence magnetic steel vein. It was even more terrifying. One after another, array patterns and talismans constructed by lightning appeared on the Tai Chi diagram, and gradually intertwined to form an extremely terrifying giant array. This was a powerful array formation that Shi Tianhao had gradually figured out under Lin Feng's guidance, after he had attained his essence soul Dao. It was called the Nine Heavens Divine Thunder Array, and it was extremely ferocious and destructive. The core of its power was the Nine Heavens Divine Thunder, which was the same as the Purple Firmament Dao Guardian Array, the Nine Heavens Divine Thunder Emperor Capital Array. Although its foundation was not as thick as the Purple Firmament Peak Array, which had been accumulated over a long period of time, its power was already on the right track. In particular, Shi Tianhao's divine powers and dermic powers were astonishing, far beyond that of ordinary essence soul incarnation cultivators. Under his activation, the power of the array formation was even more tyrannical. Usually it would trigger the natural heavenly thunder in the outside world, but now it was triggering the magnetic force in the essence magnetic steel vein. The array formation had not been officially activated, but its power was already more terrifying than the array formation that the Chouchen clan had activated previously. During his days in Tianhuang Vastland, Shi Tianhao would also use his free time to figure out this array formation divine power. Swap the 284th formation pattern with the 285th formation pattern. The 1769th formation pattern is wrong, and needs to be corrected. Li Yuanfang looked at the 9th Heaven Thunder formation that Shi Tianhao had set up carefully and meticulously. Shi Tianhao adopted all of these suggestions. Even though he had proven his primordial spirit, he was still slightly inferior to Li Yuanfang in terms of array formations. Previously, before setting up the array formation, he had specially communicated with Li Yuanfang to listen to Li Yuanfang's opinions, so that the power of the array formation could be stronger. Li Yuanfang frowned slightly. The 3027th formation pattern. It was rare for him to be stuck, but it wasn't because there was an obstacle. It was because time was of the essence and he didn't have enough time to verify his calculations. This formation pattern did not seem to be wrong to Li Yuanfang, but he had some ideas that it might be possible to make the array formation stronger after adjusting the formation pattern. However, this needed to be verified. Li Yuanfang had never come to a conclusion about things that had not been verified. Hence, after a slight pause, he continued, "Keep the 3027th formation pattern as it is for now. You can use the Yang retreat technique for the 3988th formation pattern. The effect will be better." While communicating with Shi Tianhao, Li Yuanfang also set up an array diagram. Invisible and formless astral winds appeared one after another, twisting the limited space in the mineral vein into pieces. It was the fierce and indestructible Nine Heavens formless astral wind. The array diagram that Li Yuanfang set up was the Nine Heavens formless astral wind array diagram that Lin Feng had obtained after destroying the Wind God sect in the past. The array diagram was damaged at that time. After a short repair by Lin Feng, although its power was not as good as before, it could still be used. Shi Tianhao and others had used it when they first went to the Kuanping hidden treasure. Later, Lin Feng completely repaired the array diagram. After continuous analysis and deduction by him and Li Yuanfang, it was even more powerful than when it was at its peak in the past. In retrospect, the Wind God sect in the past made Lin Feng think that the Nine Heavens formless wind array diagram was the most valuable thing, besides the Tianhou golden bead. It was even rarer and more precious than the primordial spirit practitioner and the Tianfeng treasure fan. It was a very good array formation. Although it was not as good as the top formations such as the Yin and Yang Life and Death Formation, the Vairocana Formation, and the 9 Luminaries Sky-Shattering Formation, its power was also extremely outstanding. It was also one of the rare mountain-protecting formations that could move. Its geographical conditions, or the source of power, was the astral wind layer above the sky. At this moment, Li Yuanfang's hands kept changing the incantation. The 9 heavens formless wind array directly communicated with the astral wind layer above the 9th heaven, which was densely covered with the most primitive 9 heavens formless wind, which could split the sky and the earth and destroy everything. At this moment, Li Yuanfang's cultivation was still low. Although his attainments in formations were high, there was still a limit to the power to activate such a formation. Therefore, at this moment, he was assisting Shi Tianhao. Step by step, he handed over the control of the 9 heavens formless wind array to Shi Tianhao. He communicated with Shi Tianhao and asked Shi Tianhao to activate the 9 heavens thunder formation and the 9 heavens formless wind array at the same time. Above the primordial Tai Chi diagram transformed by Shi Tianhao's primordial spirit, at this moment, the astral wind and the thunderbolts were constantly colliding, turning into an even more terrifying death zone. The mutual generation of wind and thunder was originally Shi Tianhao's unique skill. At this moment, with the help of Li Yuanfang, he activated it with the power of the formation, and obtained an even more terrifying power of wind and thunder. Among the various magic skills of Shi Tianhao, the infinite wind and thunder technique was the first magic skill he comprehended after practicing the Tao Te Ching of heaven taught by Lin Feng. Nowadays it was rarely used, but it was not because the power of this magic skill was insufficient. On the contrary, the wind and thunder surged, constantly transforming each other, and the increase of power was almost infinite. The key to limiting its power was actually Shi Tianhao's own endurance. Today, when Shi Tianhao had proved his primordial spirit, the limit of the infinite wind and thunder power that he could bear was extremely terrifying. In theory, as long as he was given enough time to prepare, this was his most powerful magic skill in terms of the scale of power. However, the problem was here. At this point, the battle of the primordial spirit level was ever-changing, and in the blink of an eye, it could be thousands of rounds of confrontation. Therefore, Shi Tianhao needed time to prepare the infinite wind and thunder technique, so he gradually used it less. However, today he was here to specially set up a trap, so this problem did not exist. Therefore, Shi Tianhao decisively used this powerful trump card again. Not only did he use the infinite wind and thunder technique again, but with the help of Li Yuanfang, he activated the 9 heavens thunder formation and the 9 heavens strong wind formation together, thus obtaining an even more powerful power of wind and thunder, even exceeding the current personal limit of Shi Tianhao. Shi Tianhao and Li Yuanfang were busy at the side, and Wang Lin was not idle either. He directly took off his human form and revealed the primordial spirit incarnation of the Netherworld Tai Chi diagram. Above the Netherworld Tai Chi diagram, a demonic gate suddenly opened. The world inside was empty, and there was only a dot of light. Then, a line extended from the dot of light and stopped at another dot of light. Then, a line continued to extend from this dot of light and stopped at the next dot of light, and so on and so forth. In the next moment, the demon gate closed, and the karma line that extended all the way suddenly reversed. The last technique of Wang Lin's 4 symbols realm technique, the karma realm. At the same time that he used the karma realm, Wang Lin also took out the mysterious sky ceiling flag. A black-robed Dharma treasure, the primordial spirit Feng Tianjun, appeared. After communicating with Wang Lin, Feng Tianjun patted the flagpole, and light flashed on the flag, and a person descended. However, it was not the strongest person on the mysterious sky ceiling flag, the former hall master of the underworld hall, Su Anda. Instead, it was the weakest of the 3 Dao integration experts on the flag, the sect master of the human Tao of the reincarnation sect, Zhang Enrui. Zhang Enrui sighed and followed Feng Tianjuan's instructions. He closed his eyes, opened his mouth, and exhaled a breath that reeked of alcohol. This alcohol was not pungent, nor did it have any special smell, but it could make people fall into a state of unconsciousness. Naturally, It had no effect on Tao integration experts or great demons of the unification of the stars and souls. However, this alcohol engulfed the space where Shi Tianhao was, causing his opponents to involuntarily ignore Shi Tianhao, who was accumulating power and waiting there. Although they were in the pith region of the vital magnetic steel mine, and even a Tao integration expert's divine sense couldn't be used to detect them, Shi Tianhao's infinite wind thunder technique, which was activated by the two spell formations, was simply too powerful. Furthermore, it was clearly hostile. Liang Fu, riding Cloud Immortal, and the other cultivators of the Great Zhou dynasty would not be able to detect them. However, if it was a great demon from before, there might be a risk of being detected. At the level of the Yuao Dragon King and the ancestral crocodile Great Sage, even in an environment like the Spirit Steel Mine, their spiritual senses were still extremely sharp. It was hard to tell from afar, but when it was close, they would be very sensitive to danger. Therefore, Wang Lin first used his karma realm to help Shi Tianhao conceal his opponent's sudden inspiration, and then let Zhang and Rui conceal himself further. In other places, this method might not have worked. After all, a powerhouse's soul could not sense danger, but they could still sense danger when they spread out their divine sense. But in this Yuan magnetic steel pith area, Wang Lin's move was enough to take his life. Yuao Dragon King and the ancestral crocodile Great Sage swaggered into the pith of the mine. Even with their divine powers, they could no longer determine the exact whereabouts of Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and the others. They only knew that they had disappeared in the direction of the pith of the mine. However, the two great demons still maintained a minimum level of caution. Xianmen Tianzong and the others were now famous. Who knew if they had any special techniques up their sleeves? At the very least, Yuao Dragon King, who had studied Buddhism with Golden Cicada, knew that Buddhism cultivated the great Tao of karma. By understanding and severing karma, one could deceive the senses of others. Golden Cicada had lived such a carefree life all these years, so carefree that many people and demons did not even know of his existence. Apart from his powerful divine powers, one of the most important reasons was that he cultivated Buddhism to deceive karma. Of course, Buddhism's sudden inspiration concealment of karma was not omnipotent. It depended on the cultivator's own realm, divine powers, dharmic powers, and the strength of the opponent's divine powers, as well as the strength of their spiritual senses. At the same time, if the opponent had something to use against them, rather than an illusory clue, the effect of the concealment would naturally be greatly reduced. However, in a situation where they were almost blind, Yuao Dragon King and the ancestral crocodile Great Sage could not sense the danger that was so close at hand. It was like two blind men without a guide dog, without even a walking stick. No matter how careful they were, they would not be able to detect the traps that had already been laid beneath their feet. They could only wait until they actually stepped on it before they could react. As for whether they could make it in time, that was another question altogether. Chapter 934. Yuao Dragon King, who was walking forward, suddenly stopped in his tracks. Something's not right. It's highly possible that they are using the Tao of karma to mask one's spiritual senses. I can vaguely sense some clues. He had been learning from Golden Cicada for a long time. Even though his dharmic cultivation was limited, his senses were sharp. Ancestral crocodile sage stopped in his tracks and growled. You mean to say that the situation has changed from being in the light to being in the dark? Yuao Dragon King said decisively. Retreat first and wait for them to come out of the mine. It might be a waste of time, but it's much safer. If we don't make it in time for third senior brother, then there's nothing we can do. If we keep going like this, we might not be able to kill them, and we might even get ourselves killed. Oh, it seems like they really do have bad intentions. Then we won't accidentally injure them. Shi Tianhao's voice suddenly sounded. In the next moment, a blinding light erupted from the darkness in front of Yuao Dragon King and ancestral crocodile sage. Two gigantic arrays that were almost stacked on top of each other appeared in front of them, distorting the space. That terrifying purple-blue lightning made the two great demon beasts, who had fused their star souls as one, almost unable to open their eyes. Their demon souls felt a faint piercing pain. Along with the sea of lightning that was filled with the intent of destruction, An endless amount of astral winds began to accumulate, almost condensing into a solid form. The astral winds had lost their formless and formless qualities, and had instead become colorful and dazzling. The astral winds and the lightning intertwined with one another, reinforcing each other and growing each other. The resulting explosion of power sent chills down Wuxia Dragon King, an ancestral crocodile sage's spine. Before they could react, the terrifying power of wind and lightning had already erupted, turning into an endless storm of lightning that engulfed the two monsters. In an instant, many thoughts flashed through the minds of Wuxia Dragon King, an ancestral crocodile sage. No matter how powerful the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong are, they are still not as powerful as their master, the master of the celestial gate. Such a powerful force is not something that can be achieved in a short period of time. They must have been preparing for an ambush. But even with such a dense magnetic force, they can sense our presence and know that we are approaching them. How did they do it? Not only can they sense our whereabouts, but they also know a way to conceal our spiritual senses. The two great demons were ambushed, so they were naturally bewildered. However, they quickly calmed down, knowing that now was not the time to think about the cause and effect. The key was to deal with the ambush of Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao and the others. Despite the sudden attack, the two monsters reacted quickly. Against the terrifying lightning storm, Wuxia Dragon King, Ao Dragon, an ancestral crocodile sage, both transformed into their true forms immediately. In the mighty dragon roar and deafening roar, a scaleless dragon with a body like white jade and a huge crocodile covered in rock-like heavy armor appeared in the mineral vein. Wuxia Dragon King revealed his true form of the white jade dragon, and his body immediately turned illusory. It was as if he had entered the boundless illusory realm, and no longer existed in this world. This was the innate ability of the white jade dragon race. With a high cultivation base, Bai Yulong's ability to transform between the illusory and the real was no longer just based on the Tao of spatial transformation. There was also the profound power of the transformation between the illusory and the real. When the body turned illusory, the enemy's attacks, be it spells or physical martial arts, would be unable to harm the body. Therefore, from a certain point of view, the white jade dragon could be said to be the dragon with the strongest defense. If he couldn't neutralize the white jade dragon's innate divine ability, it would be very difficult for him to truly injure it. Wuxia Dragon King did not dare to let his guard down in the face of Shi Tianhao's terrifying wind and lightning. He channeled all of his energy to the maximum. If there was a slight mistake, the illusory world of nothingness would reveal itself, and there would be great danger under the thunderstorm. On the other side, ancestral crocodile great sage could only rely on his own defensive power to resist. His thick rock armor had amazing defensive power, but in the face of the terrifying thunderstorm, it seemed to be shaky. The astral winds were like sharp blades that slashed at the surface of his rock armor, causing cracks to appear one after another. Meanwhile, the thunderbolts continued to explode on top of the cracks, blasting the already cracked rock armor into pieces, turning it pitch black. The terrifying power shook ancestral crocodile great sage's true form, causing his blood to boil and stars to appear before his eyes. As an ancestral crocodile, its physical strength was one of the best among the Dark Sea Dragon clan. Among all the branches of the Dragon clan, only the refined armor Black Dragon and the Yellow Dragon could be compared to it in terms of pure physical strength. At that moment, the thick rock armor on ancestral crocodile great sage's body lit up with tens of millions of glowing talisman patterns. They worked together to resist Shi Tianhao's endless wind and lightning, but were continuously destroyed by the wind and lightning. His rock armor was even more extraordinary. It was formed by combining the power of the earth and water elements. The power of the earth element was thick and solid, while the power of the water element was constantly circulating to deflect the opponent's attacks. Its defensive power was not inferior to the refining armor Black Dragon's black-scale divine ability of the same realm. Under normal circumstances, if he revealed his true form and fought with Shi Tianhao one-on-one, Shi Tianhao would probably have to use the divine light of End and the full power of his physical body martial path to activate the stone sword to attack. Only then would he be able to break through his defense. In terms of pure defensive power and physical strength, Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage was not inferior to Feng Tian Great Sage, whom Shi Tianhao had fought before. But now, he was facing Shi Tianhao, who had been accumulating power for a long time. He borrowed the power of the two formations and the unlimited wind and thunder technique that surpassed his original limit. In a rush, he was beaten to a sorry state, and the rock armor on his body kept cracking. Piece by piece, the rock armor was annihilated in the wind and lightning, and the originally thick rock armor was shaved off layer by layer. Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage's body was already shining with dazzling starlight, and he had also released the stars he had refined. Demonic power kept strengthening the rock armor, but it could not keep up with the speed of wear and tear. So the rock armor became thinner and thinner, and Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage's body was about to be revealed. "Damn you, little bastard!" Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage kept roaring, wanting to swallow Shi Tianhao in one bite. But under the impact of the wind and lightning, he could not move forward. He wanted to dodge and retreat, but the thunderstorm had completely swept in all directions, and the entire void was stirred into chaos. If it were not for the special situation of the mineral pith of the magnetic light vein, Shi Tianhao's attack would have completely turned the magnetic steel vein into ruins. Even so, the dark mineral pith area was trembling at this moment, as if it could collapse at any time. The black wall and the ground weren't solid, so there weren't any cracks. However, they were constantly fluctuating like water, like the raging waves on the surface of the sea. The wall and the ground seemed to be collapsing, unable to maintain their original shape. The terrifying power of Shi Tianhao's attack made the huge mineral pith of the magnetic steel vein tremble, and the magnetic force continued to disintegrate, unable to continue. Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage was caught between a rock and a hard place. Seeing this, Yuao Dragon King's eyes flashed. His attack can't be endless. It will be difficult to kill the ancestral crocodile, but he might be able to severely injure it. Thinking of this, Yuao Dragon King growled, "Ancestral Crocodile." He rushed to Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage's side and opened his mouth. The Great Sage Ancestral Crocodile reacted quickly. Even though he was extremely frustrated, he still turned his huge body into a cloud of black mist and entered Yuao Dragon King's mouth. At last he managed to avoid Shi Tianhao's infinite wind and thunder technique. Yuao Dragon King did not have it easy either. In order to save Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage, he had no choice but to retreat from his illusory state, and was immediately baptized by the lightning storm. His defensive power was much weaker than that of the ancestral alligator Great Sage. He hurriedly escaped into the boundless illusory boundary, and narrowly escaped the calamity. Just as he was about to endure the final stage of the infinite wind and lightning art, he heard Shi Tianhao chuckle. "This is just the beginning. The show has only just begun." As Shi Tianhao shouted, the nine heavens hurricane array suddenly stopped and reverted to a small dot of light, falling back into Li Yuanfang's hands. The original infinite wind and lightning art suddenly lost its balance. The lightning continued to roar, but the raging storm had lost its source. The entire art was on the verge of collapsing. Yuao Dragon King did not think that this was Shi Tianhao's mistake. On the contrary, a strange look flashed across his eyes, and his expression became more serious than ever. The lightning storm, which was originally balanced and constantly supporting each other, suddenly lost one pole. Although it had lost the power to continue growing, at this moment, the lightning erupted with a terrifying might that it had never experienced before. Although it gave the impression that it was running out of energy, the sudden burst of power reached its peak, as if it was about to go into a final frenzy. Shi Tianhao's Yuan Shen turned into the primordial Tai Chi diagram, and spun towards Yuao Dragon King. At the center of the Tai Chi diagram, a purple light flashed and shot out, piercing through the lightning storm. Under the guidance of this purple light, all the lightning and thunder converged into a straight bolt of lightning, heading straight for Yuao Dragon King. This bolt of purplish-blue lightning was so condensed that it looked like a solid object, but it kept moving forward. At this moment, the pith zone of the magnetic steel mine finally collapsed with a loud bang, dust flying everywhere. The magnetic energy of the entire mine seemed to have been drawn to this spot, turning into a blinding white magnetic light that spiraled around the purplish-blue lightning. Together with the purplish-blue lightning, It shot towards Yuao Dragon King. Lin Feng's avatar saw this, and his mouth twitched. This thing really isn't an electromagnetic cannon. The magnetic storm engulfed the entire mine, and it was as if the earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking. Countless mines and tunnels collapsed, and sparks flashed everywhere in the void. The array that the Chouchun clan had set up in the mine was completely destroyed. Chouchun and the cultivators of the Great Zhou dynasty were in so much pain that they wished they were dead. They felt like they were being torn apart by the invisible magnetic storm. After fusing with the magnetic force in the magnetic steel mine, Shi Tianhao's powerful attack vaguely had the terrifying power of the bipolar magnetic chaotic whole divine light released by the Grand Imperial Palace of Creation. Chapter 935. Even Xianmen Tianzong's own people had to be careful when dealing with the changes caused by the terrifying lightning that had extracted a vast amount of magnetic energy from the magnetic steel or vein. Wang Lin did not attack the opponent together with Shi Tianhao. Instead, he unleashed his mana to protect Yang Qing, Luo Qinggu and the others. However, his true and false realms' divine arts were also ready to be unleashed, and his target was none other than Yuao Dragon King. The White Jade Dragon King, who was at Yuao Dragon King's level of cultivation, had a deep understanding of the Tao of transformation. In fact, he was extremely resistant to Wang Lin's true and false realm. However, on the other hand, Wang Lin's true and false realm was very effective against the White Jade Dragon tribe's innate divine ability. When the White Jade Dragon tribe was tired of dealing with Shi Tianhao's attacks, Wang Lin's sudden attack could very well tip the balance. However, Shi Tianhao's attack was enough to cast a shadow over Yuao Dragon King's heart. The magnetite thunderbolt looked like it was moving slowly, but in reality, it was extremely fast. It was much faster than sword rays, treasure rays, and spells. Even a powerful demon like Yuao Dragon King could not avoid it in time. He could only use his race's natural abilities to the fullest in hopes of avoiding it. Although he had left the Mystic Sea to learn from Golden Cicada, and had returned to the dragon race's ancestral land in recent years, he was still the strongest person in the primordial sky dragon race. Even though he had already relinquished his position as the White Jade Dragon race's patriarch. Now, if he wanted to find a White Jade Dragon that was stronger than him, he was afraid that the only person who could transform into a White Jade Dragon was his eldest senior brother Monkey. However, this magnetic lightning was far too terrifying. Wherever it passed, space collapsed and turned into primal chaos. Both the real and the illusory worlds were forcefully reversed. Even though Yuao Dragon King was already at the level of one with the astral soul, his body was still constantly shifting between being real and illusory. It was not easy for him to turn into an illusion, but he was dragged out of the boundless illusory world by a terrifying and mysterious force. He turned back into reality and faced the terrifying power of the lightning. Of course, Yuao Dragon King wasn't willing to give up just like that, so he immediately reverted back to his incorporeal form. Then he was dragged out and struggled again. In just an instant he had gone back and forth countless times. Every time he materialized, his body would be burned by the lightning. As his injuries worsened, it became more and more difficult for Yuao Dragon King to use his abilities. He could clearly sense that Shi Tianhao's attack contained powerful Tao annihilation energy, and it was disintegrating his divine ability. Just like Xiao Yan's celestial flaming lotus, Shi Tianhao had made use of the right time and the right place to launch this powerful attack. Even if all the external conditions were met, he would not be able to do it again for a long time. The power of the Tao of annihilation was even stronger than Wang Lin's supreme annihilation. He had paid a huge price in exchange for this extraordinarily violent power. Yuao Dragon King's heart was filled with despair. After struggling for thousands of times, his innate mystique would be nullified. When that happens, even the ancestral alligator great sage, or the black dragon of the same realm, might not be able to survive. Ancestral crocodile sage, who was temporarily swallowed by Yuao Dragon King, was also shocked. He thought he was going to escape, but now he had nowhere else to run. Shi Tianhao's attack would turn him and Yuao Dragon King into a skewer of candied fruits. But at that very moment, the space around the battlefield began to warp and distort due to the destructive power of the lightning bolt, and Uao Dragon King's illusory and corporeal world transformation. The void that had been destroyed and turned into a barren wasteland suddenly lit up with white light. It seemed to be the power of a realm. The power of the realm was at the point where Uao Dragon King and the lightning met. Uao Dragon King was surprised. Under the pressure of the lightning, he had no time to pay attention to anything else, and was swallowed by the realm passageway that suddenly appeared. And the lightning swept all the way, turning the domain passage, which was originally only a dot, into an extremely wide flat crack, as though a hole had been opened in the void. Then the lightning twisted and straightened again. It shot toward the mineral vein above, destroying everything in its path. It pierced through the mineral vein, and broke through to the infinite wasteland before finally disappearing from the world. Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao did not have the time to feel sorry for what had happened. They shifted their attention to the realm passageway in front of them, and silently sensed the mysteries within. The mineral pith zone had been destroyed, and a large amount of dust floated in the air. There was still a large amount of magnetic energy that interfered with their divine sense, but at least they were no longer in the dark. So that's how it is. This is a foreign dimension, and it's in contact with the marrow area of the origin magnetic steel vein. A large amount of the marrow's spiritual power has been drawn into this foreign dimension. No wonder the marrow showed signs of strong but weak signs of decline. Shi Tianhao said in realization. The foreign dimension and the mineral pith zone had reached a balance. But now that I have destroyed the mineral pith zone, the flow of spiritual energy inside has begun to become chaotic. I wonder what is hidden inside and how the change in the flow of spiritual energy will affect it? Wang Lin said. Let's go in first. The two monsters just now have also entered. Shi Tianhao nodded and entered the realm passageway with Wang Lin into the foreign dimension. While the kings of hell were fighting, the little devils in the mineral vein above were suffering. Both the Chouchen clan and the Great Zhou dynasty's camp suffered heavy losses. Liang Fu, the lord of Yanliang, and Li Yao, the cloud-riding immortal, who was at the nascent divinity incarnation stage, were in better condition. After all, they were only affected by the aftershock, and the thunderbolt that pierced through the mine did not pass through them. But the two primordial spirit adepts were also in a sorry state. Cloud-riding immortal looked down with lingering fear. Who was it that struck just now? Liang Fu's face was dark. The magnetic energy is too strong. I cannot sense the aura of the magical power contained within, so I cannot be sure. But there is definitely no one in the Chouchen clan in this mineral vein who has such power. I don't know who the person who fought with Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao was. But if their opponent did not cultivate enlightening or magnetic magical powers, then it can only be Shi Tianhao of Xianmen Tianzong. Cloud-riding immortal heard this and fell silent. Although he did not say much, he was actually grateful to Liang Fu for stopping him from tailing Shi Tianhao and the others. He was also glad that he was not completely muddle-headed and did not stubbornly chase after them. The Chouchen clan in this mineral vein has also been beaten senseless. The formation has also been broken. They can no longer stop us from mining magnetic steel. After a moment of silence, Cloud-riding immortal said. But let's not go too deep. Let's just dig some ores here. Dig as much as we can and then leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, something unexpected might happen. Liang Fu nodded solemnly. He and Cloud-riding immortal were originally in charge of dealing with Chouchen and the other intruders. However, the other intruders were ridiculously strong, and they could not clear the area or resist them at all. In order to save time, the two Essen Soul Big Shots could only work together as miners. After all, their efficiency was much higher than that of their subordinates. Looking at the damaged mineral vein, Liang Fu and Cloud-riding immortal looked at each other and sighed. Shi Tianhao was very satisfied with the power of his attack. But his original intention was to greet Uao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Sage, not to clear out the magnetic steel mine. Therefore, although he was satisfied with the power of his mystic art, Shi Tianhao was still a little resentful. After all, he did not achieve his goal. Once they entered the foreign dimension, Shi Tianhao looked around with an unfriendly gaze. Unfortunately, the dimensional passage he tore open caused the dimension to become chaotic. Ao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Sage did not seem to be here. TSK, what a disappointment. Shi Tianhao shook his head. But he quickly pushed the matter to the back of his mind and began to look around the foreign dimension with great interest. This was a very vast foreign dimension, but it was very run-down and desolate. As far as the eye could see, most of the place was barren land and sand dunes. There was no sign of life. The cold wind howled, stirring up a sandstorm that blurred the world. But in the eyes of Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao, the environment here was much more comfortable than when they were in the mineral vein. After entering this place, the magnetic force was still abundant, but it was no longer scattered all over the place. On the contrary, the magnetic force seemed to have formed a stable channel that extended in all directions in this foreign dimension. These magnetic forces converged into rope-like existences, extending out in the void in an orderly manner. Some of the more concentrated magnetic forces had even formed a tangible magnetic light. In such an environment, Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao and the others could freely spread out their divine senses. A small amount of magnetic force still interfered with them, but it did not affect them much. The two looked at each other. These magnetic lights seemed to be converging in one direction. Silently, Wang Lin said, "That seems to be our target." The two were bold and skilled. They followed the magnetic lights and moved forward in the foreign dimension. Of course, there was no need to mention other possible dangers. Knowing that Ao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Sage were also in this world, Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao were on high alert. They had just ambushed them. If they were to be ambushed again, it would be a joke. At the same time, Chu Yang, Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, Luo Qinggu, Tuntin and the others were still under Wang Lin's control. After all, when facing opponents like Ao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage, Yang Qing and the others' cultivation bases were still relatively low. If they were ambushed, there was no chance of survival, let alone the younger disciples. But what Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao saw and heard was still visible to Chu Yang, Yang Qing, and Luo Qinggu through Wang Lin's projection. As they walked, Wang Lin suddenly frowned and landed on the desolate ground. Shi Tianhao came to his side and saw that Wang Lin was looking at a desolate land. Unlike the yellow sand around them, the sand here was black. After sensing this piece of black sand, Shi Tianhao felt that there was a faint trace of mana left in it, which made him feel slightly familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen it before. Shi Tianhao turned to look at Wang Lin. Third senior brother? Chapter 936. Wang Lin's eyes stared at this desolate land that was completely different from the surroundings. This desolate land was actually not small, at least 1,000 miles in circumference. In fact, there were remnants of the same mana aura around the desert, but it had gradually dissipated over time. The desert in front of him must have been much larger than it was now, but it kept shrinking. If there were no external factors, with the passage of time, the desert would eventually disappear completely. However, feeling the ancient desolation of this foreign space, the desert had probably existed for more than 10,000 years, or even longer. It was quite rare for it to still have an area of thousands of miles. Of course, what Wang Lin cared about was not the cultivation of the person who left this mark. If he wanted to, he could be stronger than this. What Wang Lin cared about was the other party's background. Wang Lin was very familiar with the remnant magic power aura on the black desolate beach. Avicii demonic chi. Wang Lin said calmly. Shi Tianhao came to a sudden realization. No wonder he also felt a slight sense of familiarity, but he could not recall the specific origin. This sense of familiarity came from Wang Lin, who was beside him. Since the immemorial age, the human cultivation world had been divided into the righteous and the demonic. In the Middle Age, the confrontation between the righteous and the demonic reached its peak. Other than the war with the demon race, the main theme of the divine land was the battle between the righteous and the demonic. It was not until the final battle between the righteous and the demonic that the demonic path completely declined, and the Middle Age came to an end. In the Middle Age, the righteous and demonic paths were mixed in the human cultivation world. There were many demonic sects that shocked an era. Among them, the most powerful demonic holy land was the primordial demon cult. They controlled the demonic path and dominated the entire Tianyuan world. The leader of the primordial demon cult, Jiang Zhaoyang, was known as the primordial demon lord. When the primordial demon cult and himself reached the peak, he was recognized as the strongest human in the divine land. The supreme Tao secret of the primordial demon cult was called the primordial demon scripture. One of the orthodoxies was called the Avicii scripture. When a cultivator succeeded in cultivating the Avicii scripture, they could cultivate the Avicii demonic chi and use it to cultivate the Avicii immortal body. Although it was not truly immortal, the refined body would be impermanent. There was no fear of injury, and the body would be indestructible. Years ago, when Wang Lin entered the void battlefield for the first time, he fought fiercely with the cultivators of the Underworld Hall, who massacred his hometown. At that time, Wang Lin, who was only in the middle stage of Gold Core Realm, fought with an opponent in the late stage of Nascent Soul Realm, and both sides suffered heavy losses. His body was completely destroyed, and his remnant soul could only reside in the Underworld Pearl. Thanks to the fortuitous encounter with the primordial demon sect's Avicii scripture, he was able to reconstruct his body. However, when Wang Lin used the Avicii immortal body to reconstruct his corporeal body, he did not use the Avicii devil chi. Instead, he used the Yellow Springs true water to cleanse his soul and reconstruct his body. After Wang Lin combined his own understanding of the Tao, the Avicii immortal body had evolved into a powerful divine art that originated from Wang Lin himself. It was called the Yellow Springs immortal body. Not only did he have the advantage of the Avicii immortal body, which allowed him to gather and disperse at will, but he also had the Yellow Spring true water to forge his body. When the enemy attacked him at close range, he could turn his flesh and blood into the Yellow Spring true water to counterattack. The existence of this technique had greatly compensated for the shortcomings of Wang Lin's physical body. However, after Wang Lin proved his essence soul and refined his physical body into his essence soul, he no longer used this technique. However, Wang Lin did not abandon it and was still studying it carefully. In the past, the primordial demon sect's disciples who cultivated the Avicii immortal body were very strong cultivators below the essence soul stage. They relied on their physical body to not be afraid of getting hurt. Most of the time, as long as their soul, Yuanying or golden elixir were not hurt, they dared to fight with others by exchanging injuries for injuries. They were especially ferocious because of this divine art. After proving his essence soul, the Avicii immortal body of the primordial demon sect's disciples was not directly eliminated. The cultivator could choose to refine it into other divine arts. Generally, there were two paths. One was to refine the Avicii demon statue, which was similar to an incarnation. The other was to transform it into another divine art, the Gate of Avicii. As for how to choose, it was up to the cultivator. Wang Lin did not have the Avicii demon statue or the Gate of Avicii on hand, but he did not think of following the primordial demon sect's path. Just like how he transformed the Avicii immortal body into the netherworld immortal body, Wang Lin had his own ideas on how to improve this Tao technique. At this moment he already had some clues, but he still needed to think about it. Of course, more contact with the profound orthodoxy and dermic arts of the primordial demon sect could be a reference and stimulate inspiration, which would help Wang Lin perfect his divine arts and dermic arts faster. A trace left behind by an elder of the primordial demon sect who proved his essence soul. Wang Lin observed for a moment and said, "It should not be Tao integration, but it is stronger than the essence soul incarnation. It is most likely at the void reversion stage. This trace has been here for a long time. It should be during the Middle Era, when the primordial demon sect was still far from being destroyed." After listening to Wang Lin's analysis, Shi Tianhao nodded. In other words, just like those essence soul powerhouses who died in the Ying Ocean, he entered Tianhuang mainland by himself and got trapped here by chance. I wonder if he is still alive? Wang Lin raised his head and looked ahead, where the magnetic lights gathered. We might be able to find the answer there. The two of them continued flying forward. Halfway through, Shi Tianhao smiled and said, "It is too difficult to find the orthodoxy of the primordial demon sect now. According to Su Anda, there are very few remnants of the Fiend Tao in the Underworld Hall who are familiar with the primordial demon sect's Tao techniques. Their cultivation techniques are also very low-end, so it is extremely difficult to improve further. Due to the uniqueness of their orthodoxy and standpoint, the Underworld Hall recruited a large number of powerhouses to join them. Naturally, the majority of them were Fiend Dao cultivators. After the large Fiend Dao sects that were active in the past were destroyed, the remnants of their orthodoxy were like stray dogs and lived in fear. In order to avoid being surrounded and hunted down, most of them joined the Underworld Hall. For example, the former King Qingguang who practiced the orthodoxy of the Blood River sect, Si Kongyu, the former elder of the 10,000 Ghost sect, and King Taishan, who was killed by Shi Tianhao and came from the White Bone Path, were all like that. Apart from them, there was also the Night Demon sect, the Joyful Clan, the Shadow Demon sect, and the Netherworld Demon sect, which was also from the King of the Underworld. Wang Lin said, "In the battle between the righteous Dao and the Fiend Dao in the past, the primordial demon sect was the leader of the Fiend Dao. Naturally, it was the enemy's main target. As the two of them continued forward, their hearts suddenly stirred. They felt that there seemed to be a faint wave of divine sense spreading in all directions at the place where the magnetic lights gathered. It was extremely powerful." Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao looked at each other and restrained their auras. Although the wave of divine sense was strong, it was too far away and could not capture traces of Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao. "It's not the two great demons just now." Shi Tianhao thought carefully and said, "Judging by the wave of demonic power in the divine sense, it's also a demon. Compared to those two, it can only be stronger, not weaker. He should have entered long before we arrived. I just don't know if there is anyone else besides him." After the wave of divine sense did not find anything unusual, it retracted. However, there was a faint sense of doubt in the wave of divine sense. Just as the two of them were about to set off, Shi Tianhao's expression suddenly changed slightly. He opened his palm and an item appeared in his palm, giving off a faint glow. It was a small bell hammer. It was light gold in color, and its surface was engraved with mysterious patterns. This was a treasure that Lin Feng had given to Shi Tianhao in his early years. It was called the Ecliptic Bell Hammer. It was not a magic treasure in itself, but an accessory of the magic treasure Ecliptic Bell. In the past, Shi Tianhao was used to using this treasure in conjunction with the Yuanying magic treasure, the Bronze Void Cauldron. Later, as Shi Tianhao's own cultivation gradually increased, the Bronze Void Cauldron was also taken away by Lin Feng to plant flowers and trees. This Ecliptic Bell Hammer, Shi Tianhao no longer used it. He just kept it with him. However, at this moment he suddenly felt the Ecliptic Bell Hammer move. Although it was very weak, there was a faint feeling of joy coming from it. It was as if a wanderer had returned home, and the leaves had fallen to their roots. Shi Tianhao raised his eyebrows slightly. Could it be that the magic treasure Ecliptic Bell is in this foreign space? Although he did not know what grade of magic treasure Ecliptic Bell was and what it was used for, and he already had a lot of treasures with him now, one could never have too many magic treasures. Many magic treasures had special uses, and could not be measured by grade or magic power. Moreover, Shi Tianhao yearned for the way his master, Lin Feng, had praised him and the others in the past. He wanted to imitate it, so naturally he hoped that his family would be as rich as possible. Wang Lin glanced at the Ecliptic Bell Hammer and understood. He nodded. "Master definitely did not ask us to come here for no reason. I just don't know if there are other things besides the Ecliptic Bell. Great Demon, Avicii Devil Chi Ecliptic Bell. There are really many things here." Shi Tianhao put away the Ecliptic Bell Hammer. "Let's go." They continued forward. After flying for a while, the two of them exclaimed softly at the same time. Their gazes fell on the desert dunes in the distance. This time, it was not the desert that had been infected by the Avicii Devil Chi. Instead, there were caves in the desert. These caves were not big, with a diameter of about a meter or so. However, there were so many of them that it made one's hair stand. They were densely packed, and there were tens of thousands of them. The two of them scanned with their divine senses, and immediately discovered that the depths of these caves, under the desert, was actually hollow. There was another world inside. It was so vast that it was like an underground palace. The area of the underground palace was many times larger than the thousands of caves on the surface. It extended in all directions, and the underground palace was completely hollow. The two of them extended their divine senses all the way, and discovered that there was a huge tunnel in the distance that led from the underground palace to the surface. Looking at these caves, it seems like the survivors in the underground palace were suddenly stimulated by something. They didn't go through the main entrance but rushed out from the top of the sand layer impatiently. Shi Tianhao scanned the underground palace with his divine sense, and found that the underground palace was empty at the moment. There were no signs of life. Suddenly his heart stirred. Third senior brother, do you think this underground palace looks like? Chapter 937. Shi Tianhao did not finish his sentence, but Wang Lin understood what he meant because Wang Lin had the same guess. An ant's nest, said Wang Lin slowly. This underground palace is like a giant ant's nest. There were countless holes. There were many traces left at the edge of the hole, and it could be seen that it was some kind of insect that broke out of the sand. However, the insect was a little too big. It was undoubtedly not an ordinary ant, but some kind of demon. Just as Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao were pondering, their hearts moved at the same time. They saw the void in the distant sky suddenly break open, and hundreds of black shadows surged out. They were completely black and were as big as wolves, but they were giant black ants. Their bodies flashed with a cold, metallic black light, and they looked ferocious and terrifying. This layer of cold shell armor covered their bodies' masculine qi blood. However, Shi Tianhao frowned slightly. He could clearly feel the majestic physical strength under the black shell armor, which far exceeded most demons of the same realm. He had been in and out of Tianhuang continent for the past few years. Among the many demons that he had personally interacted with, the Mang turtle race and the black armored dragon race, which were the mixed-blood black tortoise branch like the Tibetan tortoise and the mysterious underworld race, were already the most outstanding in terms of physical qi blood power. The ancestral crocodile, which he had just met, was already considered the most outstanding. Apart from those demons that he had personally interacted with, Shi Tianhao had refined the Kuanpeng's essence blood, so he knew that the Kuanpeng's physical strength was stronger than those demons. Also, when he had witnessed his master, Lin Feng, fighting with the monkey had transformed into the supreme spiritual divine monkey, and used the grand spiritual king hand, which was also impressive. The great sage did not attack, but he could feel the terrifying physical strength of the heaven-reaching demon apes, just by standing there. However, although the highest level of the black ants was only at the demon king realm, the tremendous power contained under their cold shell armor made Shi Tianhao raise his brows slightly. That was the physical strength of the Mang turtle, the black armored dragon, and the ancestral crocodile at the same cultivation level. Even the heaven-reaching demon apes and the Kuan-Peng in their Kuan form might not be able to defeat them. These black ants were only at the demon commander realm. Just based on the power of their physical qi blood, they were superior to many demon kings of the demon race. Third senior brother, these things are probably heaven-carrying ants. Shi Tianhao looked at the ants with interest. He turned to Wang Lin and said, "This demon is already extinct in other places. I didn't expect to see it here." There were many types of demons. Many races had already disappeared in the long river of time, but there were many powerful demons that had left their mark in the heaven. The heaven-carrying ants were a classic example. As the name suggested, they were demonic ants that could carry the fortune of the heavens. The demons all had their own innate abilities. In terms of physical strength alone, the heaven-carrying ants were definitely a race that could not be ignored. Throughout history, only the primordial celestial dragons, the primordial divine elephants, and the pure-blooded black tortoises could match them. There were even rumors that the heaven-carrying ants were superior to the other three races in terms of physical strength alone. Apart from them, the Kuan-Peng in their Kuan form and the heaven-reaching demon apes of the primordial demon apes could also be compared to the other four races, but they were slightly weaker. However, the heaven-carrying ants, the primordial divine elephants, and the pure-blooded black tortoises were no longer seen. Generally speaking, it was assumed that the three races were extinct. The pure-blooded black tortoises had already gone extinct in the primordial epoch, and the primordial divine elephants had a similarly sparse population, becoming extinct in the primordial epoch. In the end, even the heaven-carrying ants gradually disappeared in the Middle Epoch. Xianmen Tianzong and the others had never thought that they would see the demons that belonged to the legends of history in the alternate dimension, under the magnetite or vein. Wang Lin stared at the ant colony and slowly nodded. So these are the heaven-carrying ants, but they look a little strange. The black ants had ferocious looks in their eyes. They shook their heads and constantly scanned the surroundings. The heaven-carrying ants that appeared here were only demon kings and demon marshals. Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao had concealed their tracks, so they could not discover them at all. However, Wang Lin could clearly feel that from the heaven-carrying ants, there were waves of extremely strong divine sense. It was the divine sense that only great saint demons could have. Moreover, it was not an ordinary great saint demon. It was most likely a great demon at the level of astral soul fusion. The two brothers looked at each other. This aura of divine sense. Is it the great demon who probed with his divine sense just now? Thinking of this, how could the two not understand that the heaven-carrying ants in front of them were actually puppets? They had empty bodies, but the great demon had erased their spirits, refined their demon nascent souls and demon cores, and made them into his doppelgangers. This guy is probably doing something. His main body can't leave, and he's suspicious, so he let these heaven-carrying ants come here to investigate. Shi Tianhao curled his lips. The yellow heaven bell may also be nearby. My bell hammer here has moved, so it's impossible for the yellow heaven bell to not have any reaction. This just confirms his suspicions. Wang Lin's eyes flashed. These heaven-carrying ants are also stained with the Vichy demon chi. It seems that everything is really gathered together. He looked up at the direction where the many magnetic lights converged. It's there. At such a close distance, this great demon's cultivation isn't weak. We can't avoid his divine sense. As he said this, Wang Lin directly spread out his figure and walked toward the heaven-carrying ants with a calm expression. In that case, let's go directly. Shi Tianhao smiled. Third senior brother, don't kill these ants. Although only their shells are left and refined into doppelgangers, they are still good things. He also spread out his figure and went to meet the heaven-carrying ants. Although the heaven-carrying ants were strong, the strongest was only at the Demon King realm. If Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao really wanted to attack, how could they stop them? These heaven-carrying ants looked coldly at Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao coming over. Suddenly, their demon chi trembled and reached fusion. Hundreds of ants suddenly gathered and turned into a huge figure. It stood up and attacked Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao. This was one of the heaven-carrying ants' innate divine abilities. It was similar to the Tao soldier formation system. When the power of many giant ants gathered together, it would cause a qualitative change from quantitative change, erupting with power that surpassed the limit and turned the world upside down. Since ancient times, there were human cultivators who subdued demons and turned them into Tao soldiers. In the eyes of human cultivators, the heaven-carrying ants were the most suitable demons to be refined into Tao soldiers. Each individual was very powerful. With such a race's innate divine ability, they could achieve twice the result with half the effort. The ancient heavenly gate once tried to tame and subdue the heaven-carrying ants to be refined into their own Tao soldiers. Unfortunately, they were obstructed by other aspects. The heaven-carrying ants themselves weren't easy to deal with, so they failed in the end. However, it was also during that period that the heaven-carrying ants started to decline. A large number of experts died. These heaven-carrying ants were all clones refined by the same big demon. Now that they gathered, it was as if another stronger clone of that big demon had descended. However, it still couldn't block the edge of Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao. Wang Lin looked at the huge black figure in front of him and didn't stop. Yellow Spring's true water surged around him and turned into the river of forgetfulness, sweeping towards the black figure. Although this black figure was completely formed by heaven-carrying ants and was completely black, one could roughly see its shape. It had a tiger's head and ape's body. Light flowed in its eyes like the sun and moon. On its forehead, there wasn't a king character. Instead, there was a circular pattern like a small mirror. Facing Wang Lin's river of forgetfulness, The circular pattern on the black figure's forehead suddenly lit up. Like a real mirror, it reflected the appearance of the river of forgetfulness. The next moment, the surging yellow spring's true water actually gushed out of this circle, and turned into the appearance of the river of forgetfulness. It faced Wang Lin's divine ability. Wang Lin's eyes moved slightly, but his expression didn't change at all. The river of forgetfulness suddenly expanded, and its scale was much larger than before. The other party's river of forgetfulness swayed a little, and its scale also increased. However, after a certain extent, it reached its limit. However, at this moment, his river of forgetfulness compared to Wang Lin's river of forgetfulness was like the difference between a mountain stream and the Yangtze River. The silent river of forgetfulness swallowed the yellow spring's true water, which was of the same origin. Then, it sank the black figure to the bottom of the river. Good move. The great demon's last consciousness thought was transmitted, and then it was purified by the yellow spring's true water. The carrying heaven ants that were originally gathered together also scattered. Although they still had tremendous power, and their shells were still flashing with a cold luster, the light in their eyes had completely disappeared. All the carrying heaven ants were like clay puppets and wooden carvings at this moment. Wang Lin retracted the river of forgetfulness, and kept all the carrying heaven ants. He and Shi Tianhao looked at each other. So it's that Lu Yuan. In the past, the 10 most active great demons in Tianhuang mainland were used to being called the 10 sages of the demon race. Most of them had their own clans, but only great sage Lu Yuan was a Dao Lu Yuan, and he always acted alone. This demon was wild and difficult to tame, and at the same time, he was very aggressive. He loved to challenge other great demons, and he sought to improve in battle. He had a bad reputation in Tianhuang mainland, but he was indeed very strong. However, he disappeared a few years ago and had not appeared for a long time. Lu Yuan had the head of a tiger and the body of an ape, and his eyes were as bright as the sun and moon. He stood on 1,000 mountains, and there was a circular pattern on his forehead. His innate divine power could reflect the opponent's divine powers and dharma spells like a mirror, and he was rather difficult to deal with. Although it was just a clone just now, Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao had already recognized him after a short exchange. Let's go! Although they knew the foundation of great sage Lu Yuan, Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao were not affected at all. They did not stop, and instead rushed toward the place where the magnetic light converged. Soon, a tall mountain appeared in Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao's vision. It was a mountain peak that was completely black. Golden and black light flickered faintly at the top of the mountain. Around the mountain peak, there were chains that bound the mountain peak. However, it was not to suppress the mountain peak, but to forcibly uproot the mountain peak from the ground. The mountain was firmly fixed on the ground, and the two sides were in a stalemate. If one looked carefully, the numerous chains were shockingly formed from countless heaven-bearing ants that were connected from head to tail. Chapter 938. This jet-black mountain peak, which flickered with alternating golden and black light, was the place where the magnetic light gathered in this foreign dimension. At this moment, the scene in front of Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao was quite strange. Countless carrying heaven ants were connected head to tail, turning into thousands of chains that wrapped around the mountain peak. From their movements, it seemed like they were trying to uproot the mountain peak from the ground. These carrying heaven ants had different cultivation levels. Some were demon kings, some were demon commanders, and the lower ones were demon generals. There were even more ants with little demon chi. However, at this moment, they were connected as one. Under the effect of their innate abilities, their power was very strong, even exceeding the limits of their cultivation level. They were even stronger than many great demons that had achieved immortal demon souls. Even a demon king heaven ant was only the size of a tiger or wolf. Compared to the huge bodies of other demons, it was very small. However, its power was that of a demon king, and its physical strength was stronger than other demons of the same level. However, under such circumstances, the entangled pitch-black mountain peak was still firmly fixed in place, in a stalemate with the chains formed by the carrying heaven ants. Wang Lin scanned with his divine sense and understood. So that's how it is. The pitch-black mountain peak is formed by the Avicii demon statue, refined by a powerful cultivator of the primordial demon cult. The bottom of the mountain isn't firmly connected to this foreign space. Instead, it's suppressing something. Wang Lin's eyes flashed. It's a great sage carrying heaven ant that has achieved immortal demon soul. Shi Tianhao nodded. That carrying heaven ant with immortal demon soul must be the queen of this group of carrying heaven ants. The carrying heaven ants were a matriarchal clan, and the leader was always the queen of the clan. The two of them shouted, and their eyes flashed. In their vision, the pitch-black mountain peak gradually turned into a black mist. Through the black mist, they could see a carrying heaven ant lying quietly in the deepest part of it. Generally speaking, the queen of the ant clan would be much larger than ordinary ants. With a huge swollen abdomen, it was difficult to even move. This carrying heaven queen ant looked just like that. Her front half was black, and her back abdomen was white. It was extremely huge. However, unlike ordinary ant queens that had difficulty moving, the holding heaven queen ant was slightly bloated, but judging from its appearance, it could still move freely. However, its overall size was much smaller than an ordinary heaven-carrying ant. It was so small that it was a little exaggerated. Its length was not even as long as a normal person's palm. However, the strong sense of power contained in this body still let Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao clearly know that this was a great demon whose physical strength was far superior to other demon race great sages of the same realm. Unfortunately, they're all dead. Shi Tianhao curled his lips. With his and Wang Lin's eyesight, they could see that whether it was the numerous carrying heaven ants that had turned into chains or the carrying heaven ant queen that had fallen from the jet black mountain, they were all dead, leaving behind only their powerful bodies. And Wang Lin, who had a certain understanding of the primordial demon sect's ancient books, also quickly saw that the Avicii demon statue that had turned into a jet black mountain was already ownerless. It was not only the Avicii demon statue that made up this jet black mountain, but also the cultivator's void return physique. The two gradually melted together, forming such a jet black mountain. But the divine sense and thoughts had all dissipated, and there was no breath of life. Seeing this, how could Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao not understand that this primordial demon sect cultivator and these carrying heaven ants were actually mutually wounded, and they almost perished together? Most likely, this demonic cultivator wanted to subdue and refine the carrying heaven ants here, but he was resisted by the carrying heaven ants. Both sides fell into a stalemate, and in the end, both of them were exhausted. However, after all, both sides had extraordinary foundations. Even if their divine sense had dissipated, they still formed a stable balance of power, and the stalemate had lasted until now. And looking at the black mountain lingering on the jet black mountain, the Avicii demonic chi was still constantly invading the carrying heaven ant chains that bound him, and the carrying heaven ant queen that was suppressed at the foot of the mountain. It could be seen that although both sides perished together, there was still a slight difference in strength between the two sides. If this continued, and the jet black mountain did not dissipate, and the void return physique did not completely collapse, the Avicii demonic chi would one day refine all the carrying heaven ants. And then this primordial demon sect cultivator had hope of using the void return method to rebirth. Although it was only a certain hope, there was no doubt that this was the follow-up method left by that demonic cultivator. Judging from the current situation, if there was no external intervention, then this war between humans and ants would most likely be won by humans. If he succeeded in rebirth, he could immediately harvest a large number of carrying heaven ant avatars. Although except for the queen, the other carrying heaven ants had not yet achieved the immortal demon soul. They all had very high potential. If they improved their cultivation base in the future, they would be an extremely terrifying force. Under the situation where the many carrying heaven ant avatars worked together, it was possible that their strength would surpass his main bodies. Even now, with so many carrying heaven ants working together, they would be able to contend with his main body. However, this was destined to be an ideal situation, and it was also a last resort. Presumably, even if that demonic cultivator had a better method, he would not be willing to do this. Moreover, his expectations were destined to not be realized. Not to mention that Xianmen Tianzong and the others had arrived, Just looking at the hundreds of carrying heaven ants that had been refined by great sage Lu Yuan just now, it was clear what the situation here was. Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao both wore calm expressions as they looked up at the jet-black mountain. Between the golden and black light, there stood a tall figure. The figure had the head of a tiger and the body of an ape, and his complexion was as beautiful as the sun and moon. It was great sage Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan, the great sage, was also staring at them with a burning gaze. The circular pattern on his forehead trembled slightly like water ripples. His two nostrils panted heavily, forming two long white lines that stayed in the void for a long time without dispersing. Eventually, they turned into clouds and mist. Beside great sage Lu Yuan, on the top of the mountain, there was a small ancient bell that seemed to be cast from gold. It had a simple and unadorned appearance, and its surface was engraved with mysterious patterns that exuded a vigorous power. Its artistic conception and aura were exactly the same as the yellow heaven bell hammer. Shi Tianhao glanced at the small ancient bell. This is the yellow heaven bell? I'm afraid it's not something that the primordial demon cult cultivator possessed. Otherwise, he could have directly subdued these carrying heaven ants. I don't know why this treasure also fell into this foreign space. Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao faced off against great sage Lu Yuan. Both sides were constantly scanning each other with their divine senses. Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao's expressions changed slightly. So that's how it is. Great sage Lu Yuan, who was at the realm of Star Soul as one, could even win against the combined forces of the carrying heaven ants and the jet black mountain. However, this great demon clearly didn't want to destroy the rare opportunity under his feet. Instead, he wanted to subdue and refine it. This wasn't a simple matter. Not only did the jet black mountain and the carrying heaven ants reach a miraculous balance of power, there was also the yellow heaven bell, and a large amount of magnetic force gathered here. This made the situation even more delicate. Great sage Lu Yuan was a belligerent, but he suppressed his violent temper and carefully tried to refine the mountain and the carrying heaven ants together. This great demon's eyesight was also very sharp. If he could refine and absorb the yellow heaven bell, the jet black mountain, the carrying heaven ants, and the magnetic force gathered here together, then even he, who was at the realm of Star Soul as one, would benefit greatly. His strength would have a qualitative change. After refining a powerful clone, its strength might even be no weaker than his main body. If he could completely refine and absorb it, then it couldn't be better. He was confident that after refining a few more stars, he would immediately go through the first tribulation. With such a bright future in front of him, it was no wonder that great sage Lu Yuan was willing to slowly polish here. In fact, great sage Lu Yuan was at the realm of Star Soul as one after all. After a long time of hard work, he was only half a step away from success. A portion of the carrying heaven ants had been refined by him into a clone. This was proof. It was like splitting a mountain and splitting a rock. The rock finally loosened and many fragments fell. Although these heaven-holding ants were separated from the whole body and refined by great sage Lu Yuan first, when great sage Lu Yuan completely refined all of them in the future, he could still trace the source and wouldn't be affected at all. After a long time of refining, everything in front of him was like an unripe fruit that had finally ripened. Because of this, great sage Lu Yuan's mood was terrible when he saw Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao appear. Two brats at the primordial spirit transformation realm? The other one, hurry up and scram. Otherwise, I will also eat you. He stared at Wang Lin. As for you, you dare to destroy my clone. Don't even think of leaving this place alive. Great sage Lu Yuan had been suppressing his manic emotions. Now he instantly erupted. Standing on the mountain peak, he didn't say anything. He opened his bloody mouth and shot a beam of white light towards Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao. The white light was like a waterfall, transcending the barriers of the void. The moment it was shot out, it arrived in front of Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao at the same time. The surrounding magnetic lights shook slightly. Many of them were guided by the waterfall and also shot towards their targets. A brilliant smile appeared on Shi Tianhao's extremely handsome face. His lips were red, and his white teeth even shone faintly. He didn't take great sage Lu Yuan's attack head-on. Instead, he suddenly extended his body and shook his arms. The image of the Kuan Peng appeared, and he transformed into a green rock that covered the sky. He flapped his wings and soared high into the sky. Then he swooped down towards Great Sage Lu Yuan. Wang Lin's expression was indifferent. A demonic gate opened above his head. He used the true and false world's mystique and dodged Great Sage Lu Yuan's attack. Great Sage Lu Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly. The contempt in his eyes immediately lessened. Previously, when Wang Lin destroyed his heaven-bearing ant clone, he hadn't displayed his full strength. Thus, Great Sage Lu Yuan was only angry that he had been offended. He didn't think that Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao had the ability to threaten him. But now that he saw the scene in front of him, Great Sage Lu Yuan took note. Although they are only at the primordial spirit incarnation realm, the mystique and dermic powers of these two brats are quite good. Where did these two people come from in the human race? Previously, he had stayed in this foreign dimension for a long time. Not to mention the divine land, he didn't even know the current situation in infinite wilderness. Could they be people that Taishu Temple secretly nurtured? Great Sage Lu Yuan's gaze turned increasingly cold and sinister. But they don't look like it from the mystique and dermic formulations. It wasn't that he couldn't stop refining the chains on the mountain peak. It was just that temporarily stopping it would delay the successful refinement. Thus, Great Sage Lu Yuan couldn't figure it out. He simply stopped thinking about it. With a long roar, he directly pounced towards Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao. Chapter 939. As Great Sage Lu Yuan pounced, his two huge palms opened wide, as though he wanted to pluck the stars and moon from the sky. He grabbed at Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao from the left and right. He was a combative person by nature, and worshipped the idea of honing his mystiques and demonic powers in battle. While he was arrogant, he was also very perceptive. In the past, he had battled all over Tianhuang Wasteland. He had challenged the other top figures of the 10 sages of the demon race, including the Golden Rock Great Sage and the Violet Sea Dragon King. The only one he had not provoked was the Enchantress. In addition, there were other great demons at the realm of astral soul fusion, and even human experts. He had also fought against those who were on par with him or slightly stronger than him. He sought to improve himself in battle, but he didn't want to throw his life away by overestimating his own abilities. The two characteristics of violence and cunning coexisted in Great Sage Lu Yuan. He was so notorious that everyone hated him and demons hated him. One of the reasons Great Sage Lu Yuan had been able to live until now was because of his perceptive ability. That was why, although he saw that Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao were far stronger than their peers, he still fought 1 against 2 and did not care. Wang Lin frowned slightly. The river of forgetfulness appeared on the Yellow Springs path, and a pitch-black bridge of helplessness was erected over it. Wang Lin stepped onto the bridge, and at this moment, Great Sage Lu Yuan's hand also reached out to grab the bridge of helplessness. Great Sage Lu Yuan clenched his fists tightly, wanting to crush Wang Lin's bridge of helplessness. Wang Lin's eyes flashed coldly, and the image of Emperor Yan's hall, which looked like the royal city of hell, appeared above his head. A terrifying force crashed down on Great Sage Lu Yuan. But Great Sage Lu Yuan laughed coldly. That was just a clone of mine. Now that my true self is here, do you think it will be the same, you little bastard? The circular inscription on his forehead began to vibrate, like a round mirror. The surface of the mirror lit up with dazzling white light. From within the white light, a pitch-black palace hall appeared. That thick and powerful energy was filled with the unique aura of the cycle of life and death. It was Wang Lin's mystique, Emperor Yan's hall. The size, shape, strength of spiritual power, and concept were all exactly the same as Wang Lin's own Emperor Yan's hall. It was like the reflection of a real object in a mirror, turning from illusion to reality, becoming something that truly existed. The two pitch-black palaces collided with a loud rumble. Life and death chi filled the air, tearing apart the heaven and earth in front of them. Wang Lin's eyes narrowed. The genuine Emperor Yan's hall. The demonic gate above his head opened, and the true and false realm divine ability was activated, wanting to see through reality and falsehood. Seeing this, Great Sage Lu Yuan laughed coldly. Don't compare my mirror manifestation to Bai and the fox's ability to fake things. Amidst the cold laughter, A mirror-like white light appeared on Lu Yuan's forehead, and at the same time, a half-white door appeared. The left side of the door was as black as ink, and the carvings on it were exaggerated and distorted. It gave off an absurd and exaggerated feeling, while the right side was as white as jade. The style of the carvings on the door was simple, but not crude. Instead, it gave off a natural feeling of simplicity and authenticity. The door opened, revealing a world where absurdity and falsehood coexisted. It was the same true and false realm mystique that Wang Lin had used. This time, it wasn't just Emperor Yan's hall. Even the true and false realm was reflected perfectly by great sage Lu Yuan. Wang Lin actually relaxed at this time. His expression was calm and indifferent, filled with a sense of calmness and simplicity. After the true and false realm, he used the ancient and present realm to reverse the flow of time. But great sage Lu Yuan did the same. Even the ancient and present realm was reflected, and he faced off against Wang Lin. After exchanging a few moves, Wang Lin understood. The concept is similar to Miao Shihao's returning light mirror mystique. It's just that this Lu Yuan's cultivation level is much higher, and so his mystique is more complete. Compared to the shape-shifting mystique of the 10,000 Laws Inner Ape, and the shadow ancient mirror of the primordial Dark Emperor, each has its own advantages and disadvantages. The shape-shifting mystique of the 10,000 Laws Inner Ape could perfectly display the mystique of the race he transformed into. At the same time, it could shift his own cultivation level and be simulated according to his will. When he transformed into a demon, he would really be that demon. Even his bloodline, demonic soul, and true spirit divine marks would be exactly the same. There was no difference between real and fake. And because of the powerful mystique and spiritual power of the 10,000 Laws Inner Ape, when he transformed into a demon and used the mystique of his race, his power would definitely be stronger than that of an expert of the same cultivation level as the demon itself. Of course, the shape-shifting mystique of the 10,000 Laws Inner Ape had some limitations. For example, the simplest flaw was that he could only transform into a demon and not a human. And the shadow ancient mirror of the Dark Emperor was a copy. It took the opponent's mystique and spiritual power as his own. However, there were many limitations. One of them was that this copy was equivalent to a copy that left a mark. The power of the copied mystique and spiritual power would forever be equal to the power and level of the original being used. The person who cultivated the shadow ancient mirror would not be able to increase the power of this mystique and spiritual power in the future. Other than that, there were many other limitations. Lu Yuan's all-seeing mirror and Miao Shihao's supernatural state were able to reflect the opponent's spells. Based on the appearance and power of the opponent's spells, they could use the exact same spells. However, this was limited to a single attack, and it was completely synchronized with the opponent's attack. This did not mean that Great Sage Lu Yuan and Miao Shihao could use this mystique and spiritual power in the future. At the same time, this mystique had its own upper limit. It was closely related to the user's cultivation level and spiritual power. For example, Great Sage Lu Yuan had used the heaven-carrying ant avatar to use this mystique. Because the avatar's strength was limited, although it had successfully reflected Wang Lin's River of Forgetfulness mystique, when it reached its limit, it could only watch as Wang Lin's River of Forgetfulness drowned and devoured it. However, right now in front of Wang Lin was a great demon at the peak of the astral soul fusion realm. The demon's spiritual power was stronger than his, and naturally, he would not repeat the same mistake. This was also why Great Sage Lu Yuan had always been very careful when choosing his opponents. If the opponent's cultivation level was higher than his myriad mirror was equivalent to being useless. But against opponents who were weaker or on the same level as him, Great Sage Lu Yuan was truly awe-inspiring. Not only could he completely dominate his opponents, but because the myriad mirror reflected spiritual power was completely spontaneous, it was not limited by quantity. Therefore, even if he was surrounded by experts of the same level, he could repeatedly escape. Although he was hated by all, he had still been able to roam freely until now. Shi Tianhao quickly understood the foundation of Great Sage Lu Yuan's myriad mirror mystique. His eyes flickered, but he was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he clenched his right fist. You The power of space spread out in all directions, instantly covering this part of the world. It wanted to freeze Great Sage Lu Yuan in place. Great Sage Lu Yuan did not panic. The mirror light on his forehead flickered, and the same power as Shi Tianhao's Yu symbol art was activated. The void suddenly twisted, and the two majestic powers of space clashed continuously. The entire foreign space was like a scroll that was being constantly twisted. At the same time, he reflected Emperor Yan's Hall again, and it collided with Wang Lin's second attack with Emperor Yan's Hall. Shi Tianhao nodded slightly. As expected, it can reflect more than one spiritual technique at the same time. But he let out a long howl, and the boiling blood and qi above his head almost solidified. All the acupoints on his body pulsed together, like the stars in the universe. In the next instant, Shi Tianhao suddenly pounced in front of Great Sage Lu Yuan. His violent power exploded, as though a small universe had exploded. This mystique of yours can only reflect spiritual techniques, but not physical combat, right? Shi Tianhao punched out, directly shattering the void above Great Sage Lu Yuan's head. Great Sage Lu Yuan let out a tiger's roar, and his entire body suddenly expanded, turning into a towering figure. He had revealed his true form. After he revealed his true form, he raised an even larger palm and slammed it towards Shi Tianhao. With a boom, Great Sage Lu Yuan's body shook violently, and Shi Tianhao was sent flying back. My Vientiane mirror can indeed only reflect spiritual techniques. But little bastard, do you think you can beat me with your physical strength? Great Sage Lu Yuan laughed maniacally. Although my physical blood and qi cannot compare to the heaven-carrying ants of the same cultivation level, I am still top-notch among the demon race. You, a human, want to compete with me in physical strength? Go back and drink a few mouthfuls of milk before you speak. He stared at Shi Tianhao and laughed savagely. But you little monkey of the human race, have such a powerful physical blood and qi at the primordial spirit transformation realm. I have never seen anything like this in my life. Even the golden body monks of the Great Thunderclap Monastery might not be able to compare to you. Now I have no interest in that kid. But you little bastard of the human race, if I devour your flesh and blood, although you are a little small, I think it will be very delicious. Shi Tianhao looked at Great Sage Lu Yuan, and did not get angry. Instead he nodded again. Rumor has it that Lu Yuan can trample over 1,000 mountains. This is a description of his physical strength. Now that I look at it, it is indeed a well-deserved reputation. Although he had been forced back by Great Sage Lu Yuan, not only did Shi Tianhao not look dispirited or anxious, but he also smiled brilliantly. It was just that his white teeth, which looked very healthy, were now frighteningly sharp no matter how one looked at them. It was as if he was an extremely greedy primordial beast that had seen its prey. When Great Sage Lu Yuan saw his expression, he was slightly stunned. What do you mean? This kid? Why does he look more like a demon than I do? Could it be that I have misjudged him? Is he actually some kind of demon that has taken human form? But that shouldn't be the case. No matter how I look at him, he is still a little bastard of the human race. Shi Tianhao unhurriedly took out the stone sword. The huge Kuanpeng Palace also appeared above his head. However, it turned into a thick black pillar of light and entered his body, quickly disappearing. He moved his neck slightly and looked at Great Sage Lu Yuan. He bared his teeth and chuckled. The wise, divine, and unparalleled handsome Lord Shi Tianhao is now also not interested in that yellow bell and those ants. But you tiger-headed old monkey, look like you taste pretty good. You are not small either. You can eat for a long time. Chapter 940. The Kuanpeng Palace was a treasure that Lin Feng had given to Shi Tianhao when he had just formed his nascent soul. Although it was only a spirit-nurturing level treasure, its foundation was extraordinary. It was formed from half of the ancient Kuanpeng's flesh and blood. On top of this foundation, an extremely heavy stone and the remains of the treasure, the heavenly wind treasured fan, were also integrated into it. This made this treasure not only have amazing potential, but it was also extremely powerful. It surpassed most treasures of the same level, and was one of the few spirit-nurturing level treasures that could challenge treasures of a higher level. After Shi Tianhao had attained the primordial soul realm, his supernatural powers and dharma powers had improved greatly. If the Kunpeng Palace did not attain the transformation realm, its power would not be able to keep up with Shi Tianhao, its master. After all, even if the ancient Kunpeng was resurrected and restored to its peak state, Shi Tianhao would still be able to put up a fight. But this did not mean that the Kunpeng Palace was useless. After Shi Tianhao proved his primordial soul, he could finally control this treasure as he pleased. At this moment, the Kunpeng Palace turned into a beam of dark light and poured into the top of Shi Tianhao's head, merging into Shi Tianhao's body. The acupoints all over Shi Tianhao's body rumbled, and a majestic power of qi and blood rose, but it was not like the red light of ordinary martial adepts. Instead, it was a pale golden haze that enveloped his entire body. In this golden haze, the silhouettes of countless demons and fierce beasts rose and fell. Among them, the most eye-catching silhouette was a Kunpeng that was constantly changing between a green peng and a giant Kun. The Kunpeng's body sank, and it turned into a huge Kun fish, swimming in the haze that was like an ocean. Facing Lu Yuan, who was even stronger than Great Sage Tianfeng and Great Sage Jiuying, Shi Tianhao chose to use the entire Kunpeng Palace on himself, strengthening the power of his physical qi and blood to a new level. In a situation where he did not have a huge advantage in magical powers, to defeat Lu Yuan, a battle of physical strength was the most effective way. Shi Tianhao let out a long howl, and the stone sword in his hand vibrated. The perfectly round sword edge, which was filled with incomparable sharpness, appeared in front of Great Sage Lu Yuan. Great Sage Lu Yuan's expression became even more serious. He wasn't afraid of being besieged by experts of the same level as him, which meant that he wasn't afraid of being besieged by spells and divine abilities. However, if the experts of the same level all had powerful physical bodies, then it would be very difficult for him to deal with them. He could only try to escape. Now that there was only one Shi Tianhao, he would definitely not run away, but he had to be serious. Just by sensing Shi Tianhao's body with his spiritual perception, he could already feel that there was an actual universe within him that could gather boundless might. Compared to before, his strength had reached a whole new level. This was a powerhouse that even he had to focus to deal with. Great Sage Lu Yuan's eyes narrowed. He saw a layer of light rolling around the edge of Shi Tianhao's sword. It was like the end point of all things, the end point of all things. This was Shi Tianhao's final god light. Great Sage Lu Yuan's revolving mirror divine ability was unable to reflect this divine light. Facing this sword, a sense of crisis rose up in his heart. His towering body suddenly shrank, as if he had instantly turned into dust, avoiding Shi Tianhao's sword. Shi Tianhao didn't show mercy. His sword was faster than the last as he chased after Great Sage Lu Yuan, stabbing out repeatedly. Wang Lin looked at Great Sage Lu Yuan and smiled indifferently. He didn't join forces with Shi Tianhao to attack Great Sage Lu Yuan. He didn't want to be used by Great Sage Lu Yuan's revolving mirror, but this didn't mean that he didn't want to do anything. The white-haired youth calmly clasped his hands behind his back. He unhurriedly descended towards the black mountain that was bound by the chains formed by the heaven-holding ants. "How dare you!" Great Sage Lu Yuan roared angrily. He opened his mouth and spat out a beam of white light. It set off a boundless hurricane and attracted a large amount of magnetic light that slashed towards Wang Lin. After strengthening the Kunpeng Palace, although Shi Tianhao's physical strength had improved to the point where he could fight head-on against Great Sage Lu Yuan, he could not use his other divine abilities. As for Great Sage Lu Yuan, other than the mirror revolving thousand phenomenon, it wasn't that he didn't have any other techniques. While he was fighting with Shi Tianhao in his original form, he also used various techniques to attack Shi Tianhao. But after being interrupted by Wang Lin, he had no choice but to divert a portion of his energy to block Wang Lin. Originally, he had a slight advantage against Shi Tianhao, but now, the situation had reversed. Shi Tianhao had immediately turned the tables. This caused Great Sage Lu Yuan to fly into a rage. He coldly stared at Wang Lin. What a cunning brat. Wang Lin calmly met his gaze and smiled coldly. In actual combat, the situation could change in an instant. Many times, it wasn't just a contest of divine abilities and magic power. It also included environmental factors, battle awareness, adaptability, psychological state of both sides, and many other factors. In addition, there were also factors such as whether or not they knew each other well, whether or not their divine abilities and techniques could restrain each other. Among the disciples under Lin Feng, Wang Lin is pretty much the purest pragmatist. Like Xiao Yan Zhuyi, Shi Tianhao and the others, sometimes when they run into a situation where the other's strong point just so happens to also be their strong point, they will be unable to hold back and fight the strong, wanting to fight the strong head-on, wanting to see who is stronger and who is weaker. But this kind of situation rarely happened to Wang Lin. He only believed in one principle, and that was a dead enemy was the best enemy. When fighting with others, Wang Lin had his own pride. However, his pride was in winning in the end and killing his enemies. At this moment, Wang Lin was leisurely and relaxed. He easily dodged Great Sage Lu Yuan's attacks and walked towards the mountain peak and the holding heaven ant. He easily helped Shi Tianhao share the pressure and also took the initiative in the battle. His gaze was fixed on Great Sage Lu Yuan. If he showed any weakness, he would immediately launch a thunderous attack with Shi Tianhao. Wang Lin didn't know if Great Sage Lu Yuan knew about this, but he and Shi Tianhao knew that in this foreign dimension, Great Sage Lu Yuan wasn't the only opponent. Yuao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage were here as well. Great Sage Lu Yuan was a veteran of many battles. He had experienced many battles, big and small, far more than Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao combined. He had a wealth of battle experience, and he knew very well what Wang Lin was planning. As the battle reached its climax, Lu Yuan's figure suddenly turned, transforming into a streak of light as he dodged Shi Tianhao's sword. He had already pounced in front of Shi Tianhao, his claw clawing toward Shi Tianhao's heart. Shi Tianhao wasn't afraid. The acupoints in his body vibrated, and he took half a step back in a flash, dodging Great Sage Lu Yuan's attack. Then he immediately took another half a step forward, clenched his empty left hand into a fist, and smashed it at Great Sage Lu Yuan. His fist was like a god swinging a hammer. The countless beasts in the sea of light around him roared in anger. Taotai transformed into earth, Taowu transformed into fire, primal chaos transformed into wind, and Qiongqi transformed into water. The bloodline power of the four great beasts surged, combining into the power of the four symbols that supported this fist. Under this fist, the entire foreign space seemed to tremble. The void constantly collapsed, and the earth, water, fire, and wind all went berserk. Endless strength was born and then collapsed. With the power of the four symbols as the foundation, the 8 trigram sky collapsing hammer was activated. The strength grew infinitely, and then it was constantly destroyed. The violent strength was like nuclear fission, increasing to an incomparably terrifying level. This was the powerful supernatural ability that had been passed down from Lin Feng, the four symbols world-extinguishing hammer. As the strongest physical body martial artist amongst Lin Feng's disciples, Shi Tianhao's fist also represented the strongest strike amongst all the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong. Great Sage Lu Yuan's expression also changed slightly, but he quickly calmed down and did not retreat. His claw collided with Shi Tianhao's four symbols world-extinguishing hammer. Under this strike, Great Sage Lu Yuan, who was at the realm of star and soul as one, suffered a loss. The giant hand that covered the sky was covered in blood and flesh. But Great Sage Lu Yuan was already prepared for this. At the same time, he opened his mouth and a violent white light shot out, bombarding Shi Tianhao's body. Even though Shi Tianhao's body was as strong as cast iron, he was still injured by Great Sage Lu Yuan's long-planned attack at such a close distance. And taking advantage of this opportunity, Great Sage Lu Yuan's figure leaped up, distancing himself from Shi Tianhao and pouncing towards Wang Lin. If not for the Black Mountain Peak and the heavenly carrying ant, he would have dealt with Shi Tianhao first. He would have ignored Wang Lin's provocation. In any case, with the mirror manifestation, he was not afraid of Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao attacking him together. But now he wanted to kill Wang Lin, who was weak in close combat, and his mirror manifestation was more convenient to deal with. Then he would slowly deal with Shi Tianhao. Seeing this, Wang Lin was not afraid at all. Instead, he chuckled lightly. Great Sage Lu Yuan's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, he felt that something was wrong. Then, he felt that Shi Tianhao, who he had left behind, suddenly burst out with a strange power. It was as if everything had returned to its origin. Returning to its origin. Without the slightest delay, Shi Tianhao's fierce attack came again. Great Sage Lu Yuan was dumbfounded. This kid's creation divine light has two effects at the same time. It can't be that he alone can have two creation divine lights, right? Although the conditions were harsh, the creation divine light could be stolen and transplanted. Great Sage Lu Yuan knew this. But the prerequisite was that the transplanted person did not have the creation divine light with them. At this moment, Great Sage Lu Yuan could only watch helplessly as Wang Lin continued to attack. He had no choice but to turn around to deal with Shi Tianhao, who continued to attack. Otherwise, he would immediately be pierced through by Shi Tianhao's sword. And what made him extremely depressed was that he had managed to take back the initiative by exchanging injuries with great difficulty. But now, he had to watch helplessly as he lost the initiative. Moreover, the injuries on his hand were equivalent to suffering for nothing. But at this moment, Great Sage Lu Yuan, Wang Lin, and Shi Tianhao's expressions changed at the same time. A hole appeared in the void nearby, and two huge figures emerged from it. One was shrouded in a white dragon's aura, and the other was shrouded in black fog. The newcomers were Yuao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage. Perhaps they wanted to let Great Sage Lu Yuan, Wang Lin, and Shi Tianhao both suffer. But looking at the situation in front of them, they could not afford to wait any longer. Great Sage Lu Yuan was fighting 1 against 2, and he was gradually losing ground. Seeing that the situation was not in his favor, he would most likely suppress his greed and anger, give up on the treasures, and try to escape. When Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao saw this, they nodded at the same time. As expected. Right now they were about to face Great Sage Lu Yuan, Dragon King Yuao, and Great Sage Ancestral Crocodile. Chapter 941. Yuao Dragon King's dragon aura was much smaller than before, and even his demonic aura was weaker than before. And the realm of illusory and corporeal was broken and fragmented. Shi Tianhao's powerful strike from the magnetite or nearly cost him his life. Though he managed to escape with his life due to the opening in the alternate dimension, he was severely injured and his vitality was greatly diminished. On the other hand, the Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage had managed to escape death thanks to Yuao Dragon King's protection. However, he was in a foul mood. Like Yuao Dragon King, he had 1 foot in the grave, and was barely able to keep his life. For Ancestral Crocodile Sage, who had roamed freely for tens of thousands of years, this was a great humiliation. The two demons stared at Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao with unfriendly gazes. Their hostility was obvious. Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao were calm. To them, enemies hiding in the shadows were the most annoying. The two brothers stood side by side, fearless even against 3 monsters at the unification of the Astral Soul's realm. Lu Yuan looked at Yuao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Sage and grinned. What, are you two here for these 2 brats as well? Though they were both monsters, Lu Yuan did not let his guard down when Yuao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Sage arrived. After all, not only were they not friends, Lu Yuan had fought Ancestral Crocodile Sage before. Though Yuao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Sage were at odds with Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao, Lu Yuan was not on good terms with them either. Moreover, there were treasures like the Heavenly Ants and the Black Mountain. Lu Yuan could not afford to be careless. Yuao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Sage stared at the Black Mountain bound by the Heavenly Ants. Greed flashed across Ancestral Crocodile Sage's eyes. Yuao Dragon King shook his head and said, "Let's focus on the bigger picture." Although Yuao Dragon King's injuries were not light, the Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage had just been saved by him, and they had a good relationship. Hence Yuao Dragon King nodded. "Don't worry, I know." Yuao Dragon King looked at Lu Yuan and said, "We are not interested in your things, but we want these too." Great Sage Lu Yuan grinned and said, "All right, please help yourselves." Ancestral Alligator Great Sage's gaze turned cold. "Yuan Qing Lu Yuan, don't be so shameless." Silently, Yuao Dragon King said, "Yuan Qing Lu Yuan, haven't you been looking for someone?" Demon Sage Lu Yuan paused for a moment, then his eyes lit up. He glared at Yuao Dragon King and asked, "You know where the Dharma Heart Ape is?" Yuao Dragon King answered nonchalantly, "He is my first senior brother. We have always kept in touch." He opened his mouth, and a tiny strand of hair flew out, floating in the air. Demon Sage Lu Yuan's eyes scanned the hair. "It really is the hair of the Dharma Heart Ape. It seems like you really do know where he is." Yuao Dragon King nodded. "That's right. If you want to find my first senior brother, I can introduce you to him. But you must help me capture the disciple of the Celestial Gate Master. My third senior brother is in the hands of the Celestial Gate Master. And my master is also being troubled by him. Capture the disciple of the Celestial Gate Master. And get my third senior brother back. My first senior brother will be very happy, and he might even meet you." Great Sage Lu Yuan's eyes kept flickering. Not only did he admire the monkey's glory in the past, but he had also obtained some secret arts left behind by the monkey, allowing him to cultivate powerful demonic energy. However, because of this, he had encountered many difficulties in his cultivation. If he could get the monkey's guidance, he would be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. His gains in cultivation would not be inferior to the Black Mountain and the Carrying Heaven ants. However, Demon Sage Lu Yuan's eyes turned and he asked, "Who is the Celestial Gate Master?" Yuao Dragon King said, "He is a new mighty one of the human race, but you don't need to worry about him. My master, Grandmaster Golden Cicada, and the Kunlun Dragon King are already on their way to find him. The other mighty ones of the monster race are also paying close attention to him. One wrong step, and he will be doomed." Demon Sage Lu Yuan nodded and said, "I can help you, but you can't touch the things in this foreign dimension." Though Yuao Dragon King had shown him the hair of the monkey, Demon Sage Lu Yuan would not trust him so easily. He needed further verification. Before that, Demon Sage Lu Yuan would not spit out the benefits he had already obtained. Yuao Dragon King said coldly, "No one is greedy for your things. Don't worry." Though Demon Sage Lu Yuan sensed the arrogance of the dragon race, he was not angry. He looked at Ancestral Crocodile Demon Sage with a smirk. Ancestral Crocodile Demon Sage snorted and did not say a word, silently agreeing to Yuao Dragon King's decision. Demon Sage Lu Yuan nodded in satisfaction and looked at Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao with a murderous gaze. "I said I will try to capture them alive, but these two brats are strong. If I can't capture them alive, then I will have to kill them. Don't make a fuss then." He glared at Shi Tianhao and said fiercely, "Also, if you want to exchange people, just one is enough, right? Try to leave the white-haired brat to you. As for that brat, I will skin him alive." Yuao Dragon King looked at Shi Tianhao with a cold glint in his eyes. He felt the pain from his already painful injuries intensify. He said coldly, "Fine." Demon Sage Lu Yuan threw his head back and laughed. "Then I'll have to trouble you two to keep him busy. I will go deal with that white-haired brat." With that, he pounced at Wang Lin. Yuao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Demon Sage did not mind. They had some understanding of Demon Sage Lu Yuan's myriad manifestation mirror, and knew that between Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao, Demon Sage Lu Yuan would be more comfortable fighting Wang Lin. The two monsters also pounced at Shi Tianhao, preventing Shi Tianhao and Wang Lin from helping each other. Wang Lin coldly looked at Great Sage Lu Yuan. He knew that Great Sage Lu Yuan was treating him like a soft persimmon. However, Wang Lin didn't dodge. The space beside him opened up, and a large purple flag appeared, shining with a rainbow light. Beside the flag stood a black-robed young man with a cold expression. It was the Grand Realization Grade Dark Heavenly Ceiling flag and its owner, Yuanling. "Feng Tianjun, help little junior brother. Leave this Demon Sage Lu Yuan to me," Wang Lin said calmly. Feng Tianjun nodded silently. He raised the dark heavenly ceiling flag and walked to Shi Tianhao's side. He slapped the flag and the former underworld hall lord, Su Anda, appeared. Su Anda was one of the strongest Dao integration cultivators of the human race. Even if he did not have a magic treasure with him, he could fight barehanded. Even if Yuao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Demon Sage revealed their true forms, they might not be able to defeat him. This was especially true when Yuao Dragon King was severely injured. Shi Tianhao and Su Anda worked together to fight against Yuao Dragon King and ancestral crocodile demon sage. Even demon sage Lu Yuan was taken aback. What kind of magic treasure is that? It can control a Dao integration pinnacle stage cultivator. This person's mystiques and dermic powers are extraordinary. Even my myriad manifestation mirror can't reflect all of them. If he had another powerful magic treasure with him, even I wouldn't be able to do anything to him. He then looked at Wang Lin, and his expression became cold. But you gave this magic treasure to your junior apprentice brother, so you are dead for sure. My myriad manifestation mirror can reflect all of your mystiques and dermic powers. You're not born with a strong body like that, brat. I can tear your primordial spirit apart with one claw. Demon sage Lu Yuan took a step forward and broke through the void toward Wang Lin. However, Wang Lin remained calm. He shed his human form and revealed his primordial spirit avatar of the Netherworld Taiji diagram. The image of Emperor Yan's hall appeared above the Taiji diagram again. Demon sage Lu Yuan laughed coldly. The halo on his forehead flashed, and an identical image of Emperor Yan's hall appeared. But in the sky above the Netherworld Taiji diagram, besides Emperor Yan's hall, there was also a boundless hell of the Yellow Springs. It devoured this part of the world and turned the battlefield into the Netherworld. Demon sage Lu Yuan ignored it and repeated the same thing. He also reflected the hell of the Yellow Springs. Although the two worlds of the Yellow Springs were similar, they clashed in the sky. A crack appeared in the sky. It was as if a painting had been torn in half. The boundaries of the two worlds pressed against each other. In the next moment, Wang Lin's hell of the Yellow Springs suddenly trembled. Then it rapidly shrank toward the center. Finally, it condensed into a small black ball. Silently, it floated above the Netherworld Taiji diagram. A sense of foreboding finally arose in Lu Yuan's heart. Why does this guy's technique contain such a powerful Dao annihilation energy? Using such a spiritual art will destroy his primordial spirit. If I reflect it in its original form, my demon soul will also be injured. He hesitated for a moment. This stinking brat can't do anything to my mirror manifestation. He's going all out. With this hesitation, he controlled himself and did not reflect Wang Lin's art of ultimate destruction. And with the support of the art of ultimate destruction, Wang Lin's Emperor Yan's hall naturally surpassed demon sage Lu Yuan's simple Emperor Yan's hall. With a loud bang, it smashed demon sage Lu Yuan's Emperor Yan's hall into pieces. Demon sage Lu Yuan's eyes lit up like stars. He opened his mouth and spat out white light, blocking the power of Wang Lin's Emperor Yan's hall. Then he prepared to counterattack. He laughed coldly in his heart. Struggle before death. It's up to you. Just as he was thinking, he saw the Netherworld Taiji diagram formed by Wang Lin's primordial spirit surge with white light. Almost in an instant, the black destructive qi that Wang Lin had exhausted with all his might appeared again, turning into the dark void of the hell of the Yellow Springs. Demon sage Lu Yuan was stunned. Then he cursed, "What a cunning brat. So you still have this up your sleeve." Then he saw Wang Lin use the art of ultimate destruction again, activating Emperor Yan's hall. The second wave of attacks came. Demon sage Lu Yuan did not hesitate this time. He decisively reflected the art of ultimate destruction and Emperor Yan's hall together, blocking Wang Lin's attack. At the same time, he continued to rush forward, seeking an opportunity to close in. Although his demon soul and physical body had been damaged by the destructive power of the art of ultimate destruction, as long as he had the art of extreme rebirth to recover, it would not affect his next attack. But demon sage Lu Yuan, who was waiting for Wang Lin to use the art of extreme rebirth, realized that Wang Lin did not move this time. He only lightly retreated, avoiding demon sage Lu Yuan's attack, which was obviously not up to par because of his injuries. Demon sage Lu Yuan suddenly felt so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. Although Wang Lin's primordial spirit was also damaged, he often cultivated the art of ultimate destruction and art of extreme rebirth. In this aspect, his endurance and self-recovery ability were far stronger than demon sage Lu Yuan's, and he was much less disadvantaged. Lin Feng's mystique doppelganger had been quietly watching the battle. He did not move, Nor did he interrupt to give advice to Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao. He allowed them to unleash their power and experience the battle. But when he saw this scene, he could not help but shake his head and laugh. TSK, their intelligence has been crushed. Chapter 942. Lu Yuan glared coldly at Wang Lin. Very well, little bastard, I've changed my mind. I'll kill you and leave that kid for you, Ao and the others. He roared and pounced at Wang Lin again. Although his demonic soul and physical body were damaged by the power of the Tao of Annihilation, he was still very strong. Although Wang Lin's injuries were lighter than his, he still felt pressured by Lu Yuan's all-out attack. However, Wang Lin's emotions did not waver in the slightest as he continued to fight Lu Yuan. He took the time to send Chu Yang, Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, Luo Qinggu, and the others away from the Black Mountain. Great Sage Lu Yuan roared with rage, but he was stopped by Wang Lin. With Yu Ao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Sage appearing, Wang Lin no longer had to worry about his juniors being ambushed by them. Lu Yuan's refinement of the mountain chain has only been temporarily halted. All of his arrangements are actually still being made in secret. As time passes, his preparations will be complete. At that time, he might be able to refine the mountain chain in an extremely short period of time. Wang Lin directly gave the underworld pearl to Yang Qing and casually said, "Follow my instructions and destroy the arrangements first. Be careful, Lu Yuan might still have a holding heaven ant clone hiding in the mountain." Although they did not have the upper hand in the battle, Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao were no longer in a hurry after Yu Ao Dragon King, an ancestral crocodile sage appeared. The situation was dangerous, but it was not a dead end. It was a good opportunity for Yang Qing, Luo Qinggu, and the others, as well as the juniors, to hone their skills. It was much better than what they had experienced in the magnetite or vein. Shi Tianhao, who was fighting Yu Ao Dragon King and ancestral crocodile sage, smiled. He flicked his finger, and a purple dot of light landed in front of Li Yuanfang. Li Yuanfang was well prepared. His hands kept changing the incantation gesture, and streams of magic power were injected into the purple light spots. The light spots exploded and turned into a huge and complicated giant formation. At the center of the formation was a purple crown. It was Shi Tianhao's magic treasure, the purple crown, which was used as the core to suppress the formation eye and manifest the 9 heaven thunder formation. At the same time, Li Yuanfang also unfolded the 9 heavens astral winds formation diagram, drawing in the 9 heavens formless astral winds to set up the formation. 2 huge formations, one green and one purple, appeared in the air above the Black Mountain peak. Yu Ao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Sage's eyelids twitched at the sight of these 2 formations. Although they could sense that the power Li Yuanfang used to control these 2 formations could not be compared to Shi Tianhao's, and could not threaten them at all, it still brought back bad memories in their minds. Li Yuanfang stared at the Black Mountain peak below him, and at the same time he activated the 2 formations. His hands kept changing the incantation gesture, and he activated the 3rd formation. The talisman runes kept gathering, and gradually, they turned into a complicated and mysterious formation. At the same time, Li Yuanfang took out a gourd that he carried with him, pulled out the stopper, and poured out a large amount of black sand. This was the first time Li Yuanfang used an artifact to set up a formation, ever since he mined the magnetic steel mine. Before this, he had always used his own magic power to form the formation, and it was rare for him to be so serious. After the black sand entered Li Yuanfang's 3rd formation, it immediately dispersed, and each grain of sand floated in the middle of the formation. There were exactly 12 grains of sand floating in each of the runes. Thousands of grains of sand spread out, and each grain of sand was black in color, but they shone with a layer of white light. The 3rd tactical matrix that Li Yuanfang had set up was completely unfolded. Streams of mysterious magic power permeated from it. However, this tactical matrix itself did not have any attack power. Instead, it gradually combined the power of the 9th Heaven Thunder Matrix and the 9th Heaven Strong Gale Matrix. Although it was different from Shi Tianhao's unlimited wind and thunder technique, it still allowed the 2 formations to interact with each other, and vaguely produced an effect that was greater than 2. This was a formation that Li Yuanfang had learned after he advanced to the late stage of the Golden Elixir realm, and learned from Lin Feng's Four Guardians Heaven-opening scripture. The River Luo Heavenly Gate Formation. The Eastern Heavenly Gate opened, and the Light Dust Formation was formed. It was born out of Xianmen Tianzong's own formation, the Yin and Yang Life and Death Formation. In the process of learning the Yin and Yang Life and Death Formation, Li Yuanfang combined it with the Tao of the Four Guardians Heaven-opening scripture, and comprehended it. It could be combined with other formations, and had the magical effect of integrating the pivot. The black sand was the living soil cultivated by Lin Feng. After it grew continuously, he gave it to Li Yuanfang, and then refined it by Li Yuanfang himself. It was specially used to set up the Light Dust Formation. As soon as the Light Dust Formation was activated, the 9 Heavenly Thunder Formation and the 9 Heavenly Hurricane Formation resonated and combined, turning into a rolling thunderstorm that fell on the Black Mountain that was bound by the carrying sky ants. As Wang Lin had expected, black shadows flew up from the mountain peak. They were the clones of the heaven-holding ants that great sage Lu Yuan had refined and controlled. They were trying to stop the people from the celestial sect of wonders from descending. These carrying sky ants gathered in the void, and wanted to transform into Lu Yuan's appearance. Once they were formed, they could also perform Lu Yuan's mirror manifestation. Li Yuanfang was not anxious, and Yang Qing, who was beside him, also looked calm. He raised his hand and took out a picture scroll. The picture scroll was painted with a blood river. The picture scroll emitted a dark light, and the blood river in the picture became reality. Thick and smelly blood flowed continuously from it, turning into a real blood river in the outside world. After Yang Qing formed her nascent soul, the magic treasure that Lin Feng gave her was this blood river picture scroll. It was both offensive and defensive, and it was convenient to cooperate with his 4 guardians' yin-yang transformation. At the same time, Yang Qing cultivated the lunar pure water, which was also good for controlling this treasure. The blood-red river roared and surged. It was dark and gloomy, emitting a nauseating stench. It rushed to the white light on the mountain peak, and suddenly made it difficult to operate the demon power prohibition. When this treasure fought with others, it was mainly because of the blood river that it contained. Under the premise that it didn't go out of control, even if a Yuanying stage cultivator activated it, it would still be very powerful. Great Saint Lu Yuan's main body was enraged. The white light on his forehead that was like a round mirror was about to shine towards the nether blood river. But at this moment, Wang Lin used the Emperor Yan's Hall divine art that was imbued with the art of annihilation and fiercely crashed over. With this delay, the nether blood river had already swept up a group of carrying sky ants, polluting their demon power, and making it impossible to gather. On the other side, Li Yuanfang sped up the activation of the formation. The storm of thunder and lightning struck down, defeating a large number of carrying sky ants in one fell swoop. Breaking through the obstruction, Xianmen Tianzong and the others landed on the mountain peak. Great Saint Lu Yuan was unable to restrain his anger, and sped up his attacks on Wang Lin. Wang Lin dealt with it calmly, his gaze was calm and without a hint of panic. Instead, he stared at the light circle on Great Saint Lu Yuan's forehead, deep in thought. Yang Qing and the others reached the mountain peak. Without saying a word, Li Yuanfang used the light dust formation to cover the mountain peak. At the same time, dots of white light runes appeared on the mountain peak. Demonic qi overflowed in all directions. These were the traces left behind by Great Saint Lu Yuan. At the same time as Li Yuanfang made his move, Yang Qing didn't stay idle either. The true fire of the sun was continuously injected into the true water of the moon. At the center of the church, the water and fire disappeared together, gradually turning into a vacuum. The power of the vacuum was projected outwards. Wherever it went, it continuously destroyed the remnant demon power. For symbols yin-yang transformation. Xiaoyang entering the void. Yang within the yin, the mystic realm of empty yang. At the same time that Yang Qing's mystic realm of empty yang, and Li Yuanfang's light dust formation took effect, the underworld pearl given by Wang Lin was also activated by Yang Qing. It lit up with a misty yellow radiance, enveloping the entire mountain peak and the chains. With the help of Yang Qing and Li Yuanfang, The power of the underworld pearl began to continuously remove the traces left behind by Great Saint Lu Yuan. In the past, the underworld pearl had a deep foundation. Although it had not been long since it became a magic treasure, no one dared to underestimate it. Great Saint Lu Yuan didn't need to attack the underworld pearl. If he could divide his attention to control the demonic power imprint on the mountain, he would be able to resist the purification. But now that he was entangled by Wang Lin, he could only watch as Yang Qing and the others cast the spell. If he was distracted, Wang Lin in front of him wouldn't be easy to deal with. At this point in the battle, Great Sage Ryuan's heart was filled with apprehension. He had come to realize that his mirror-spinning myriad manifestations' divine ability was becoming more and more difficult to reflect Wang Lin's magic. And yet, Wang Lin's divine ability and magic clearly hadn't grown any stronger than when the battle had started. This strange situation made Great Saint Lu Yuan not dare to be distracted. He could only gather his thoughts and focus on fighting the enemy, seeking to deal with Wang Lin first. After all, Yang Qing, Chu Yang, Li Yuanfang, and Luo Qingwu's cultivation were still low. Even if they could break the demonic power imprint left behind by Great Saint Lu Yuan, they wouldn't be able to refine the mountain peak's chains. In the end, they still had to rely on Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao. Yang Qing and Li Yuanfang cast the spell while Luo Qingwu and Chu Yang dealt with Great Saint Lu Yuan's other carrying heaven ant clones. These carrying heaven ants included demon kings, demon marshals, and demon generals. Han Yang and the others also came to the mountain and fought together. The younger disciples raised their spirits. At this moment, the carrying heaven ants that appeared in front of them were stronger than Cho Chun in the magnetite steel mine. Although they needed to gain more experience, they naturally had to ensure their safety at the very least. Luo Qingwu's expression was calm. Her eyes flickered with brilliance. Her originally spirited eyes now gradually revealed a bit of sharpness. She drew the profound Che sword in her hand. Waves of fierce and sharp invisible astral winds shot out from the sword's edge. Countless astral winds continuously folded and compressed, condensed to the extreme. From formless and formless, they transformed into bright and resplendent heavenly wind sword light. Luo Qingwu's hand formed a sword seal and lightly shouted, "Go!" A total of 36 heavenly wind sword lights suddenly flashed in the void and turned invisible. Among the carrying heaven ants that surrounded everyone, the ones that rushed at the forefront were all cut into pieces. The incomparably hard shell armor that flickered with black light was also unable to resist this extremely sharp invisible sword light. 36 sword lights flickered in and out of the void, sometimes gathering and sometimes scattering. The sword lights were divided and their whereabouts were uncertain. They were formless and formless, but they were filled with a sense of perfection and invincible sharpness. It was like an invisible sword formation that coldly strangled the invading enemies. Luo Qingwu cultivated the four symbols heaven-opening scripture and comprehended the sword Tao on her own. This was the great four symbols immortal slaying sword's heavenly wind formless sword. As Luo Qingwu's cultivation realm increased, the power of this sword Tao would become even stronger. At this moment, it was the heavenly wind formless sword. When it was deduced to the extreme, it could produce 9 by 981 invisible sword lights and transform into the origin formless sword. At the same time, the individual power of each sword light would also increase. At this moment, Luo Qingwu's heavenly wind formless sword was unleashed. Other than the Demon King realm carrying heaven ants, no one could withstand a single blow from her sword. Chu Yang, who was at the side, saw this and sighed in his heart. Qingwu has worked very hard to achieve this even though she was learning under the master of the Celestial Gate. He didn't slow down either. He unsheathed his sword and fought with the carrying heaven ants. However, his heart suddenly palpitated slightly, and the light and shadow hidden in his spirit trembled violently. Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, Great Sage Lu Yuan, Dragon King Yuao, and the others were stunned. Their gazes simultaneously looked in the same direction. There's another gap in this foreign dimension. Where does it lead to? Chapter 943. There was only one entrance to this foreign dimension, and that was to the magnetic steel mine. But now one of the boundaries in this dimension suddenly broke open, and a second door to the outside world appeared. The foreign dimension is unstable to begin with. The battle between the few of us has stirred up too much of a storm for this dimension, causing the boundaries to distort and break. That is why this new passage was created. Shi Tianhao thought about it and understood what was going on. But I wonder where this new opening leads to? He looked around and inadvertently discovered that Chu Yang was also looking in the direction of the new passage. He could not help but be surprised. Strange, it is not surprising that third senior brother and I could discover it, but he actually noticed it too. How did he do it? Even fifth senior brother did not notice it. Although he was puzzled, at this moment, Shi Tianhao did not have time to think about it. He first used his transcendence energy to warn Yang Qing and the others. At the same time, he and Wang Lin were also secretly on guard, paying attention to whether or not someone had entered the new passage to prevent new enemies from appearing. Great Sage Li Yuan, Yuao Dragon King, and Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage did the same. They were fighting with Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao, but they also split a portion of their divine sense to pay attention to this unexpected situation. The experts' hearts trembled slightly. They felt that someone had entered from the entrance of the new passage, but after coming into contact with their divine sense, they immediately hid themselves. They understood that not only had someone entered from the new passage, but that person's cultivation level was also very high. Although the distance was too far, to avoid the divine sense search of Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao, one had to at least be an expert of the same level as them. Just like how Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao avoided Great Sage Li Yuan's divine sense from a distance. And there is more than one. Great Sage Li Yuan's face darkened. He hated Qianmen Tianzong and the others even more. He had been working hard here for a long time without anyone bothering him. Just as he was about to succeed, a few unexpected disasters came at this time. Just like Great Sage Lu Yuan, Chu Yang was also in a bad mood. He could feel the sword shadows hidden within his divine soul trembling nonstop, and the tremors were getting stronger and stronger. He had only encountered a similar situation once before. That was when he and the people from beyond Heaven Mountain were brought back to Jade Capital Mountain. In the Great Hall of All Heavens, the exterminating profound battle had erupted. After some analysis, Chu Yang guessed that it was because of Xiao Dongtian, the sect master of the Eastern Heaven Gate, who was at the Dao Integration Realm, and the Black Heaven Seal, which had already reached the Mahayana realm. However, it was unknown whether it was because the orthodoxy of the heavenly gates that Xiao Dongtian cultivated was incomplete, or because it was separated by the Great Hall of All Heavens in Qianmen Tianzong, but the tremor at that time was not as obvious as this time. Of course, it could also be a combination of the two reasons. However, at this moment, Chu Yang truly felt that the sword shadow in his soul was humming incessantly. It was both excited and anxious, as if it was yearning for something, but also seemed to be fearful and apprehensive. He swung the long sword in his hand, and a desolate sword light shot out, severely injuring a demon king carrying Heaven Ant. It was the Eastern Firmament sword of the Major Nine Heavens divine sword. However, as soon as this sword appeared, Chu Yang felt his heart palpitate even more intensely, and the sword shadows humming in his divine soul became even more intense. Chu Yang frowned and no longer used the Major Nine Heavens divine sword. Instead, he released his two Blood River divine swords to fight against the carrying Heaven Ants. However, at this moment, the distant sky suddenly opened, and a figure appeared. Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and the others naturally noticed the other party's existence immediately. They looked over, and saw that it was a handsome middle-aged man with 3 neat strands of long beard. He wore a tall crown on his head, and his clothes were solemn and simple. In the middle-aged man's hand was a broad-edged long sword. The body of the sword was engraved with ancient runes, and it was entirely light gold in color. A powerful sword will emanated from it, and the sword chi shot into the sky, startling all the worlds in the world. It was as if it was going to slash the heavens above and the underworld below. However, at the first sight of this middle-aged man, whether it was Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao Lu Yuan, Yuao Dragon King, or Ancestral Crocodile Sage, everyone frowned slightly. A Mahayana grade artifact? This middle-aged man was the sword spirit of the broad-edged longsword in his hand. Wang Lin's eyes flashed slightly. This sword's artistic conception is extremely similar to that of Chu Yang's major Nine Heavens divine sword. So this is the Tsangtian Dao Jian. One of the 9 treasures of the ancient heavenly gates, a Mahayana-grade artifact, the Eastern Tsangtian Dao Jian. At the end of the ancient era, the heavenly gates experienced 2 great battles, and the heavenly gates was destroyed. Many of the 9 treasures of the heavenly gates were destroyed, and only the Eastern Tsangtian Dao Jian and the southwestern Vermilion Heaven Pagoda were not damaged. The Vermilion Heaven Pagoda later fell into the hands of Xiao Dongtian and the others, and became the Eastern Heavenly Gate's blessed Grotto Heaven land. However, the Eastern Tsangtian Dao Jian disappeared without a trace, and there had been very little news of it all these years. Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao did not expect to meet the Tsangtian Dao Jian in such a foreign space. Shi Tianhao thought, no wonder Chu Yang could sense its presence. Even so, it's probably not just because of his cultivation. Maybe it's because he's hiding some secrets. Chu Yang took a deep breath, and he had completely calmed down. Although he had inherited the 9 Heavens divine sword orthodoxy from the heavenly gates, and even obtained the heavenly gates treasures, his heart was heavy as he looked at the Tsangtian Dao Jian. Because he knew that the Tsangtian Dao Jian insisted on appearing even though there were so many experts present. It was because of him. To be more precise, it was because of the 9th heaven sword shadow in his soul. In the past, the ancient heavenly gates wanted to create a second creation artifact other than the great celestial wheel, which was the 9th heaven sword. However, it was a pity that the heavenly gates was destroyed before the 9 heavens sword was completed. Unlike the immortal dragon city, the Book of Life and Death, and the other creation artifacts, which were semi-finished products before they were completely refined, the 9th heaven sword didn't even have a semi-finished product. However, at that time, the Heavenly Gates experts had already successfully taken the first step, and they had figured out the general idea. They had gathered the power of many people, and first cast a sword shadow with the supreme sword intent. With this sword shadow as the foundation, they were not far from success after smelting various treasures to refine the true body of the divine sword. The sword shadow circulated and entered Chu Yang's body, accompanying his soul. Chu Yang had also obtained the sword Dao true intent of the great 9 heavens divine sword from this sword shadow. All these years, while Chu Yang cultivated, he had been secretly searching for treasures that could refine the true body of the divine sword. He had obtained 5 out of the 9 treasures. This time, he had ventured deep into Infinite Mainland and entered the territory of the 9 nether ghost monkeys to search for the heavenly crystal. Through the 9th heaven sword shadow, Chu Yang felt that the Tsangtian Dao Jian seemed to have the 6th treasure that he was looking for. However, Chu Yang smiled bitterly. It was already good enough that the Tsangtian Dao Jian didn't kill him, let alone obtain the treasure. Through the 9th heaven sword shadow, Chu Yang knew that if the Tsangtian Dao Jian could smelt and absorb the sword shadow, he would be able to advance to the next level. Even if he couldn't achieve creation immediately, there was still hope of achieving it later on. Back then, when the ancient heavenly gate forged the 9th heaven sword, this was one of the preparatory plans. However, the 9th heaven sword shadow was now fused with Chu Yang's soul. If the sword shadow was smelted and absorbed, Chu Yang would definitely die. Now that the 9th heaven sword was not complete, he couldn't unleash its full power. On the other hand, the Tsangtian Dao Jian was already a Mahayana-level Dharma treasure in the ancient times, and it hadn't encountered any calamity yet. After so many years of cultivation, it was already at the peak of the Mahayana level. It was a sword, a treasure for killing. Its pure offensive and destructive power was even better than the 6 paths of reincarnation, which was also at the peak of the Mahayana level. Now that he was facing the 9th heaven sword, he could completely turn the tables. The Tsangtian Dao Jian's sword spirit was called Jian Tsangtian. Slowly he looked at Chu Yang and shook his head. When I was traveling in the void battlefield, I accidentally found this gap and entered this foreign dimension. I didn't expect that after tens of thousands of years of fruitless searching, I would actually get what I wanted today. He looked at Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, Great Sage Lu Yuan, and the others and said, I'm only here for this young man. I don't care about anything else. As he finished, he took a step forward and arrived at the peak of the mountain. Although great sage Lu Yuan and the others didn't believe Jian Songtian's words, they were happy to see that his target was Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao's companions. However, Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao frowned together. Feng Tianjuan's expression was cold. He slapped the Xiantian God Sealing Flag's pole, and Su Anda floated in front of Jian Songtian to block his path. Jian Songtian raised his eyebrows. Based on the fluctuations of your magic power, are you a successor of the capital emperor? Just like how the emperor of Yu was called the Ruthless Emperor after his death due to his notoriety, the king of the underworld didn't call himself the king of the underworld when he was the supreme human emperor. Instead, his title was the capital emperor. However, later on he was called the king of the underworld, and the title of capital emperor gradually faded into obscurity. Su Anda's face was numb, and he couldn't be bothered to answer. He used the king of the underworld's direct inheritance, the netherworld primordial annihilation curse, as an answer. Jian Songtian didn't expect Su Anda to answer. After he finished his question, the Songtian Dao Jian in his palm turned into a dazzling ray of light and slashed at Su Anda. Numerous Daos and Dermic arts converged and fused into the sword. As the sword slashed down, it was as if the heavenly Daos were raining down divine punishment. Luo Qingwu's eyes flashed as she looked at the sword. 10,000 Daos form one sword. 10,000 Dermic arts form one sword. 10,000 Daos form one sword. The great nine heavens divine sword is indeed extraordinary. In a sense it is also the opposite of the Mount Shu sword sex. One sword transforms 10,000 swords into one sword. Su Anda and Jian Songtian exchanged a blow. Their cultivation bases were similar, and neither could do anything to the other. The Songtian Dao Jian could perfectly unleash its power with a Mahayana pinnacle stage Dermic treasure. It was almost equivalent to a cultivator at the Dao integration pinnacle stage. If another powerful cultivator were to unleash the great nine heavens divine sword, he would definitely be mesmerized by it. However, at this moment, he only felt a chill run down his spine. Su Anda went to fight Jian Songtian while Shi Tianhao faced the ancestral crocodile great sage and Yuao Dragon King at the same time. Jian Songtian looked at Lu Yuan and the other monsters and frowned slightly. He then said to Xianmen Tianzong and the others, I don't want to do this, but I have to get this person. If you are willing to hand him over to me, I can lend you a hand to kill these monsters. Chapter 944. Lu Yuan, Yuao Dragon King, and Ancestral Crocodile Sage's movements paused for a moment. Their gazes turned solemn. Both sides were in a stalemate. If Songtian Dao Jian helped one side, he could crush the other side's defense and turn the tide of the battle. Now that he was fighting with Su Anda, Ancestral Crocodile Sage, and Yuao Dragon King were freed. Ancestral Crocodile Sage went up to keep Shi Tianhao busy, while Yuao Dragon King rushed toward the Black Mountain. Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, and Luo Qingwu were there. Capturing these three would also help him achieve his goal. Chu Yang's expression was calm. He did not look at Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and the others, nor did he wait for his death. He was still fighting Lu Yuan's carrying Heaven Ant avatar. Since the sword of Heavenly Way had already appeared, he had no more scruples. With a pull of the blade, the sword Qi became as hot as fire, and the invisible sword will turned into a furnace in the air, trapping a demon king carrying Heaven Ant in it. The majestic sword will turn the entire world into a furnace. The great demon inside the furnace was the southern flaming heavenly sword, one of the nine heavens' celestial swords. In Xianmen Tianzong, whether it was Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, or Luo Qingwu, none of them looked at Chu Yang. Even the younger disciples like Han Yang, Huang Jinting, Tan Yinqing, and Zhuge Wanqiu did not move. In the hearts of Xianmen Tianzong disciples, they would never consider such an alliance. Wang Lin ignored Songtian Dao Jian. Shi Tianhao chuckled. Come if you want. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Let's just rely on our own abilities. Yang Qing stood on the peak of Mount Dark Black and raised his head to look at Songtian Dao Jian. He said calmly, since this Taoist Chu Yang is traveling with us, we will protect him. We don't know who is in the right and who is in the wrong between the two of you. If you have the heart, we can slowly resolve it after this battle. But now, If you want to use your power to suppress us and force us to hand him over, then you are looking down on us, the disciples of the celestial sect of wonders. Even Su Anda's originally numb and cold eyes moved slightly. An ambitious person like him was deeply moved by the scene in front of him. Putting aside the fact that the current situation was delicate and dangerous, even under normal circumstances, there was no need to choose between a pinnacle Mahayana stage treasure and a minor golden elixir period cultivator, which was more valuable and which was more worthy of befriending. In particular, Chu Yang was not a direct disciple of Xianmen Tianzong. He was only a disciple of a small force that was close to Xianmen Tianzong. Even if his identity was changed and he was the successor of the Great Qin dynasty, or even the northern militant imperial court, Purple Heaven Dao, and other forces, his weight would be higher. Agreeing to hand Chu Yang over to Tsangtian Dao Jian, even if it was not purely for the sake of maximizing benefits, there was also the attraction of easily solving the current crisis. But from another point of view, this was also related to the strength and bearing of a force, as well as self-confidence and confidence. As for Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and the others, they chose to refuse Tsangtian Dao Jian without hesitation. Looking at them, Su Anda's face was expressionless. He thought to himself, like teacher, like disciple. Back then, the celestial sect of wonders dared to go against Taishu Temple for Shi Tianhao, who was only in the golden elixir period. Now his disciple is also the same. If you have the ability, then crush me and force me to make an alliance. Don't even think about making me submit. After a moment of silence, Jian Tsangtian nodded. It's a slip of the tongue. But I must get this person, so I have no choice but to offend you. After saying that, Jian Tsangtian's figure gradually disappeared. His magic treasure origin spirit completely merged with his own body, Tsangtian Dao Jian. And with a force that could topple the sky, he slashed down on Chu Yang, who was at the peak of Dark Black Mountain. Su Anda was expressionless. He put his palms together and 2 life and death nether Dao fruits appeared. They exploded in the void and turned into rolling black light. For a moment, the entire foreign dimension seemed to have turned black. Under the dark sky, countless souls howled in anger. Not to mention that Tsangtian Dao Jian, even Great Sage Lu Yuan, Yuao Dragon King, and Ancestral Alligator Great Sage felt their souls tremble. They had to be careful. This was Su Anda's strongest divine ability, Soul Cry Sky Screen. I have less than a 50% chance of reflecting this spell back to him. Great Sage Lu Yuan was secretly shocked. At the same time, he cursed in his heart. Such a powerful being is actually willing to be the pawn of these 2 brats. This is unbelievable. The Tsangtian Dao Jian shook violently. Specks of light spread out from the sword's edge. A desolate and ancient aura spread out. Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao saw this and frowned slightly. It looks like Lady Zhen, Er's family inheritance. It's the primordial Tao of longevity of the ancient emperor's lineage. However, it doesn't look like it at all. However, the name of 1 sword to 10,000 arts is indeed well-deserved. In the endless primordial era, under the river of time, longevity was nothing compared to the impermanence of life and death. Chu Yang looked at this scene with an expressionless face. The Eastern Firmament Sword Will of the Grand Nine Heavens Celestial Sword is the sword will of the ancient emperor's lineage. Then it created its own style and comprehended the true meaning of the primordial Tao of longevity. Although there are differences in depth, there is already a foundation. In the past, the ancient emperor led the world and worked together with the Taishu Temple to depose the king of the underworld. The ancient emperor's lineage was in direct conflict with the king of the underworld's lineage. The Tsangtian Dao Jian cultivated the Grand Nine Heavens Celestial Sword, and had already reached the state of 1 sword to 10,000 arts. However, there was still a long way to go before he could achieve 1 sword to 10,000 arts. However, if he wanted to push the Eastern Firmament sword will to the extreme, it would not be difficult at all. Su Anda's expression was indifferent. He changed his hand signs and the black screen in the sky shrank into a black ball of light, trapping the Tsangtian Dao Jian within. The black ball of light fluctuated in size as if it could shatter at any time. Su Anda and the Tsangtian Dao Jian were in a stalemate. Although he managed to trap the Tsangtian Dao Jian, he could not take care of the others. The ancestral crocodile sage blocked Shi Tianhao's way while Yuao Dragon King continued to charge towards Yangqing, Li Yuanfang, Luo Qinggu, and the others on the Black Mountain Peak. Wang Lin was entangled in the battle with Liu Yuan Great Sage, and could not get away for a while. He frowned and looked at Shi Tianhao, little junior brother. Shi Tianhao asked, "Third senior brother, I'm ready to go anytime. Have you gotten enough on your side?" Wang Lin answered, "Not yet, I haven't thought it through. However, that Songtian Dao Jian suddenly appeared and became our enemy. Xiao Wu and the others' safety is the most important. It's fine if I haven't done my best, I'll think about it in the future." "Very well." Shi Tianhao nodded and said, "Treasure, please show yourself, His expression changed and he used his divine sense to scan the horizon. Wang Lin did the same. Liu Yuan Great Sage and Ancestral Crocodile Sage also frowned. Yuao Dragon King's heart skipped a beat. However, the arrow was already nocked and it had to be fired. He stretched his claws towards Yangqing and the others. Even though he was heavily injured, he was still a monster at the level of astral soul unification. His attack was far more powerful than the one Liu Yuan Great Sage left on the mountain. The underworld pearl surged with a large amount of underworld water, but Yuao Dragon King's body transformed into nothingness. He evaded the underworld water and continued to attack the people on the mountain. Although they knew that they were no different from dust in front of Yuao Dragon King, Han Yang, Tan Yinqing, and Huang Jinting still subconsciously shielded Zhuge Wanqiu behind them. Zhuge Wanqiu stood rooted to the ground, motionless. She may be weak, but she was not a girl who only knew how to hide behind others. The reason why she did not move was because her heart was throbbing violently. She was at a loss of what to do. Yuao Dragon King's dragon claws tore through Li Yuanfang's array, tore through Yangqing's spell, shattered Luo Qingwu's and Chu Yang's sword rays, and headed straight for the Black Mountain Peak. Zhuge Wanqiu's face lit up with joy. Then a loud voice roared, "If you dare to touch my daughter, I will chop off your claws." A rainbow suddenly shot across the sky and landed right in front of everyone. The speed of the escape technique was so fast that even Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and the others' eyes lit up. A man in a white robe stood on top of the rainbow. He looked to be between 30 to 40 years old. He was handsome, his hair and eyebrows glowed with a faint golden hue. His facial features were 60 to 70% similar to Zhuge Wanqiu's. This man had been glaring at Yuao Dragon King ever since he appeared. He said coldly, "You are injured. Under normal circumstances, I would not make things difficult for you. But since you dare to touch my daughter, I will not let you go." He raised his right fist high, as if he was holding up a blazing sun that shone brightly like the sun at high noon. With a flick of his left hand, the rainbow under his feet landed on Yuao Dragon King. The rainbow split into 7 different colors, as if 7 different colored rivers of light were flowing side by side. As the rainbow split and reunited, it revealed an unstoppable force that could change reality and illusion. It forcefully dragged Yuao Dragon King out of the infinite illusion realm. In the next moment, his right fist, shrouded in a blinding light, came crashing down on Yuao Dragon King like a falling sun. Yuao Dragon King let out a long howl, shocked and furious. If he was at his peak condition, his opponent would not be able to do anything to him even if he also practiced the art of illusion. But now his opponent was able to break his art. Both sides clashed. Yuao Dragon King, who was already injured, was forced to retreat. He stared at the man in the white robe. The man in the white robe sneered. "Without the art of illusion, what else does the White Jade Dragon clan have? That's why I said you are injured. Under normal circumstances, I would not have the mood to fight you." Other than Songtian Dao Jian, who was still sealed off by Su Anda's soul cry canopy, Liu Yuan and Ancestral Crocodile Sage looked over as well. On top of the Black Mountain Peak, Zhuge Wanqiu called out joyfully, "Father!" The white-robed man's face lit up with joy. He left Yuao Dragon King and landed on top of the mountain. Ignoring the presence of others, he pulled Zhuge Wanqiu into his arms and laughed. "I didn't expect to see my good daughter here. Come, let me take a look, you're already a big girl." Shi Tianhao also laughed. The light turns into a rainbow and illuminates the world. "Are you Zhuge Zhan, the Burning Sun Lord?" The white-robed man was Zhuge Wanqiu's father, one of the few itinerant cultivators in the Divine Land. He was a great cultivator of the Dao integration stage, Scorching Sun Dao Lord Zhuge. Back when he entered the void battlefield, he was worried about his daughter and told her to become a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong. Previously, because of the battle between Shi Tianhao and the others, the boundary of this foreign dimension was distorted and a second entrance was opened, which led to the void battlefield. Unexpectedly, other than Songtian Daojian, even Zhuge Zhan had barged in. Zhuge Wanqiu quickly said to Zhuge Zhan, "Father, this is my master." Hearing this, Zhuge Zhan let go of Zhuge Wanqiu and looked at Shi Tianhao with a smile on his face. He cupped his fists and said, "Thank you for taking care of my daughter all these years." Chapter 945. Xianmen Tianzong wanted to find out as much as possible about the background of his own disciples. However, disciples with powerful backgrounds were few and far between. After all, his own family had top-notch inheritances. If there were disciples with ulterior motives, Xianmen Tianzong would eliminate them before they even entered the sect. Aside from little Lin Tong, Zhuge Wanqiu's situation was the most unique among the second-generation true disciples. After all, her father was a great cultivator of the path integration stage. Such a background was very rare even in the entire Divine Prefecture. However, her father, Zhuge Zhan, remembered that he had once risked his life to bring his wife and children into danger. As a result, he suffered the pain of losing his wife and children. Thus, when he returned to the void battlefield a few years ago, he specifically instructed his only relative, his daughter, Zhuge Wanqiu, to become a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong. The passage of time in the void battlefield was unpredictable. After Zhuge Zhan left, more than 5 years had passed in the vast thousand worlds. Zhuge Wanqiu was usually gentle, kind, and low-key, so much so that Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and the others would sometimes overlook the fact that she actually had a Dao integration stage cultivator as her father. Very few people knew of Zhuge Wanqiu's identity. Her peers did not know much about her background, nor did they know that she actually had such a powerful background. However, Shi Tianhao and the others had some understanding of Zhuge Zhan's situation through Zhuge Wanqiu. Many years ago, he was already a Dao integration stage cultivator. The path he cultivated was called the Divine Light of the Sun Dao. It was the legacy of the once famous Radiant Light sect of the Heaven Yuan world. However, the Radiant Light sect had been destroyed in the ancient age. Later on, Zhuge Ji coincidentally obtained it and used it to form his Yuan Shen. From there, he cultivated his Yuan Shen to return to the void, and then to the Dao integration stage, becoming one of the few lone cultivators in the world. Although he cultivated the divine light of the Sun Dao, it was different from the true Sun Fire Dao. Once he cultivated it, he would obtain the divine light of the sun. With the divine light of the sun as the foundation, he could derive many magical powers. After defeating Yuao Dragon King, Zhuge Zhan cupped his hands and smiled at Shi Tianhao. "Let's talk later. Let's deal with the matter at hand first." As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed towards the ancestral crocodile great sage who was fighting with Shi Tianhao. The most famous thing about Dao Master Lai Sun was not his cultivation level, but his extreme love for his children. Zhuge Zhan's eldest son had died a long time ago, and now he only had this little girl left. How could he tolerate being threatened by Yuao Dragon King and the others? After repelling Yuao Dragon King, he went straight for the ancestral crocodile great sage. In a blink of an eye, he was already in front of the ancestral crocodile great sage. Specks of light floated around his body, and although they looked weak, they caused the entire world to darken. It was as if there were only specks of light flashing before everyone's eyes. As soon as these light spots appeared, Zhuge Zhan's aura suddenly soared, as if thousands of suns were rising around him. He pointed a finger at the alligator great saint. His movement looked extremely slow, as if he was carrying a heavy weight. This was in stark contrast to his previous speedy escape technique. The huge contrast between one fast and one slow made people feel so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. The light around Zhuge Zhan was now concentrated at the tip of his finger. The light on the tip of his finger became more and more dazzling, so much so that people could not look at it directly. His finger was like the rising of the sun. It looked slow, but it was the strongest force of nature in the world. It was as if nothing could stop it. The divine light of the sun, the divine sun fist martial art. The sun rises from the east. Ancestral crocodile great sage did not dodge or evade Zhuge attack. Physical strength was his forte. The void at the point of contact collapsed into nothingness, and the aftermath of the explosion swept across the world. It was as if the sky had been punched through by the man and the beast. Zhuge did not have the upper hand in this attack like he did against Wuxia Dragon King, but he laughed instead. Awesome. This is what I call awesome. Ancestral crocodile great sage's eyes narrowed, but there was no joy on his face. He was known for his physical strength, but Zhuge was able to fight him head-on. This meant that other than his mystical spells, Zhuge physical strength was also extraordinary. Ancestral crocodile great sage's huge body spun in the void, and his huge tail swept across as if to break the pillar of the sky. At the same time, he opened his mouth and spat out a black mist that was as black as ink. Wherever the black mist went, the void collapsed. Zhuge saw this and retracted his hands in front of his chest. He changed his spell, and the divine light of the sun suddenly gathered around him, turning into a fruit of the way that looked like a real sun. In the next moment, the fruit of the way of the divine light of the sun flew into the sky, and the sky cracked open. The most dazzling of the 9 luminaries, the sun, flashed, and in an instant, the entire void dimmed. It was not the setting sun, nor was it dark clouds covering the sun. Instead, it was as if all the light in the world had been absorbed by the sun. The endless world, the vast void, the sea of stars. Everything seemed to be hidden in the darkness, as if they had never existed. Only the sun was the only glory, the only truth, the supreme light, and the supreme ruler. The ancient heavenly gate had the true technique of the 7 luminaries of the heavens, and it could also use the power of one's spells to activate the power of the 7 luminaries of the stars. However, if one were to compare the study of the solar star, it would be much weaker than Zhuge divine light of the sun. This was the path technique that had the deepest understanding of the power of the solar star in the history of the human cultivation world. Radiant sun saint light. Zhuge placed his left hand on his chest, and his right hand pointed at ancestral crocodile great sage. A dazzling light came crashing down from the sky. The majestic power made ancestral crocodile great sage slightly change his expression. He kept spitting out black mist from his mouth, and starlight flashed in the black mist. He brought out the stars he had refined, and all the power was added to his huge tail, lashing out at the dazzling light coming from the sky. Boom! The world was suddenly filled with light, and everyone could not see anything at all. There was only white light in everyone's vision. At such a close distance, even the divine senses of Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, Lu Yuan, Wuxia Dragon King, and Su Anda could only feel the heat. Master once said that it is extremely difficult for itinerant cultivators to make a name for themselves. However, most itinerant cultivators who can make a name for themselves have amazing skills. Indeed, he is right. Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao had the same thought. This scorching sun Tao Lord is using his divine powers and dermic powers to fight barehanded with a demon of the same cultivation level. He is indeed very powerful. Zhuge lived up to his name. His combat ability was astonishing. Not only was his divine powers and dermic powers powerful, but his combat awareness and experience were also outstanding. Even those who had similar divine powers and dermic powers might not be a match for him. Although he was bold and unrestrained, his ability to control the minute details of the battle was very precise. Lin Feng's mystical ability avatar was actually watching the battle with great interest. Among the Dao integration cultivators who went to Jade Capital Mountain that day, I'm afraid only Su Anda has a slight advantage when fighting him. However, it's very difficult for this advantage to turn into victory. The others, including Jia Luoshi, are all inferior to him. They are both top-notch itinerant cultivators. In terms of combat, even Dao Lord Luofu is not a match for him. However, back in the Ying Ocean, Dao Lord Luofu would not give his all for a temporary ally like the Great Zhou dynasty. Zhuge Zhan and Ancestral Crocodile Sage were fighting to their heart's content. Shi Tianhao did not replace Wang Lin to fight Lu Yuan. Instead, he went to find Yuao Dragon King with a smile. However, on the other side, the aftermath of a few battles had also affected Su Anda's soul's cry in the sky. Songtian Daojian finally broke out of the encirclement, but he was still blocked by Su Anda. In an instant, because of the appearance of Songtian Daojian, the situation of the battle, which had taken a sharp turn for the worse for Xianmen Tianzong, was stabilized again. They even had a slight advantage. Yang Qing and the others, who had escaped from danger, continued their previous actions. Chu Yang finally heaved a sigh of relief. The battle between the two sides was earth-shattering. The entire foreign dimension was constantly shaking as if it could shatter at any time. A large number of rifts began to appear in the dimension. It was a ghastly sight to behold. Zhuge Zhan snorted. Although he was having a good time fighting Ancestral Crocodile Sage, he was also getting a little impatient. He flipped his hand and a thick spear appeared. It was completely white and flashed with a dazzling radiance like a scorching sun. It was the Scorching Sun Battle Spear, an incarnation-level Dharma treasure that he always carried with him. This was a common problem of itinerant cultivators. Although they could do as they pleased, they were at a disadvantage in terms of resources compared to the major sects and forces. It was much more difficult for them to refine and upgrade their Dharma treasures. However, such a murderous and fierce Dharma treasure, although it was incarnation level, it could still exert great power in Zhuge Zhan's hands. In the previous battle, Ancestral Crocodile Sage had revealed his true form, and was only slightly better than him. At this moment, with the Scorching Sun Battle Spear in hand, the advantage and disadvantage were about to be reversed. Scorching Sun Dao Master, you don't have to do this. At this moment, Shi Tianhao suddenly smiled and turned to look at Wang Lin. Third senior brother, it seems that you have done your best? Wang Lin nodded yes. Shi Tianhao smiled and said, that's good. I'll play with them later. After saying that, he clapped his hands lightly. Sha Luoxian, please show yourself. Before his voice died away, a dark golden beam of light soared into the sky. A grand power concept enveloped the entire foreign dimension, not leaving out a single bit. An immovable, indestructible, invulnerable, and indestructible power concept enveloped the world. Even the cracks in the foreign dimension that were originally cracked open were stabilized and no longer shook. The world that was shaking due to the battle became as stable as Mount Tai. No matter what Zhuge Zhan and Ancestral Crocodile Sage did, the foreign dimension would not be affected. Sha Luoxian Tree? Yuao Dragon King, Lu Yuan Great Sage, Ancestral Crocodile Sage, and Songtian Daojian stared at a towering tree that stood beside Shi Tianhao. The tree trunk and branches were as black as iron, while the leaves were pure gold. At the top of the tree stood a dark-skinned young man. His facial features were similar to Lin Feng's iron tree clone. However, the iron tree clone had long been refined by Lin Feng into the Dharma treasure Sha Luoxian. This young man was the primordial spirit of the Sha Luoxian. However, Yuao Dragon King had heard that Lin Feng's Sha Luoxian tree was a spirit-nurturing great Dharma treasure that was refined in the Ocean of Sea Sanctuary 2 years ago. However, the Sha Luoxian tree before him was clearly a Mahayana-grade Dharma treasure. Yuao Dragon King was taken aback. What is going on? Chapter 946. As a demon, Yuao Dragon King was not adept at controlling treasures. However, he was still familiar with the basics of refining treasures for human cultivators. Upgrading a Dharma treasure was not an easy task. Most of the time, it was even more difficult than increasing a cultivator's cultivation level. Even with the Grotto Heaven that could speed up time, the Shura Iron Tree's quick advancement from a spirit-nurturing grade Dharma treasure to the Mahayana grade still shocked Yuao Dragon King. It can't be that the master of the Mystic Gate had 2 Shura Iron Trees and refined them into Dharma treasures, can it? Yuao Dragon King could not help but think of such a possibility. He could not think of any other reasonable explanation. Su Anda, on the other hand, looked at the Shura Wonder Tree with a flicker in his eyes. He recalled how Lin Feng upgraded the Xiantian God-sealing banner from the incarnate grade to the Mahayana grade with a wave of his hand on Mount Yujing. Looking at the Shuro Wonder Tree now, he could not help but think that it was Lin Feng's doing. Although he still found it hard to believe, and did not understand what was going on, the feeling in his heart grew stronger and stronger. The Shuro Wonder Tree was able to upgrade from the Spirit Nurturing grade to the Mahayana grade in such a short period of time because of Lin Feng. Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, and Shi Tianhao had all attained the primordial spirit realm, and Lin Feng had obtained 4 chances to upgrade his Dharma treasures from the system. Apart from the Bell of Good Fortune, which could not be upgraded to the Mahayana grade, it could be upgraded to the same Dharma treasure. The same Dharma treasure could be upgraded continuously. As soon as Lin Feng returned to Mount Yujing, he immediately upgraded the Xiantian God-sealing banner from the incarnate grade to the Mahayana grade. After the Battle of Shushan, Lin Feng began to ponder how to upgrade his other treasures. Among all the treasures he could choose from, the most powerful one with the highest potential was undoubtedly the Salo Wonder Tree. In the past, in the Ying Ocean, when the newly refined Salo Wonder Tree was controlled by the clone of Brontosaurus, who was not good at controlling treasures, it could resist the joint attack of the Dao Integration Cultivator Xiao Dongtian, and the Black Heaven Seal, which was still a transformation-level Dharma treasure at that time. Although it was strengthened by Lin Feng's creation Divine Light, the Salo Wonder Tree was still a newly born spirit-nurturing level Dharma treasure at that time. After all, its defense was very strong. Thus, Lin Feng didn't hesitate to use 2 upgrades on the Salo Wonder Tree, forcibly upgrading this newly born spirit-nurturing grade treasure to the Mahayana grade. He didn't give this Dharma treasure to Shi Tianhao. Instead, it was a temporary double insurance that Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and the others had left him and acted independently. For safety's sake, Lin Feng had temporarily set up a double insurance for them. As for Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao, Lin Feng believed that they had enough judgment and knew when to rely on themselves and when to be flexible. In fact, it wasn't just Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao. Even Yang Qing, Li Yuanfang, Luo Qinggu, and even junior disciples like Han Yang and Huang Zhenting had their own pride. They didn't want to rely on their elders for things that they could solve on their own. No one would be pretentious and resist the love of their elders, but no one was willing to be a parasite. Right now, Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao's goal had been achieved. Both of them were pragmatists, so they immediately activated the Salo Wonder Tree to temporarily block their opponents. Then they called out to Zhuge Zhan and the Xiantian God-sealing flag, and landed on the Black Mountain together. As soon as Wang Lin set foot on the Black Mountain, the whole mountain shook. Yang Qing also looked up and said, "Lu Yuan's demonic power mark has been completely removed." "Thank you." Standing on the mountain peak, Wang Lin suddenly shed his human form and transformed back into the netherworld Taiji diagram. He enveloped the entire mountain along with the chains formed by the carrying heaven ants. Meanwhile, Shi Tianhao laughed and held the yellow heaven bell hammer in one hand, and the yellow heaven bell in the other. Great Sage Lu Yuan roared again and again as he charged towards the mountain peak. However, the miraculous Salo tree in the air above the mountain peak suddenly emitted rays of dark golden light that blocked his advance. This artifact. Lu Yuan's eyes narrowed. He realized that his demonic power couldn't break through the Salo Wonder Tree's defenses. The violent white light slammed into the Salo Wonder Tree, but it didn't budge. Not even its leaves trembled. His powerful physical strength grabbed onto the black gold light, but it did not budge at all. Yuao Dragon King and Ancestral Crocodile Sage frowned, while the Tsangtian Dao Jian trembled violently. In the next moment, all 4 of them, including Lu Yuan, attacked the Salo Wonder Tree in unison. This time, the Salo Wonder Tree's leaves trembled. But what shocked Lu Yuan and the others was that the combined power of the 4 of them still couldn't break through the Salo Wonder Tree's defenses. Yuao Dragon King muttered to himself, "Not even the Salo Tree Demon at the level of unification of stars and souls has such a strong defense." A circular circle of light appeared on Lu Yuan's forehead again. It scanned the Salo Wonder Tree. It's not just the Salo Iron Tree's innate abilities, it's also infused with many other wills. Time, space, and many other Grand Dao wills, all of which have reached a profound level. Lu Yuan's mouth was bitter. Even the mirror revolution can't reflect it. Is this the artifact refined by the master of the celestial gate? Even if we find the Salo Iron Tree's nemesis, it might not have the desired effect. He was both anxious and angry. Seeing Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao enjoying the fruits of his victory, his eyes turned red with hatred. Yuao Dragon King's expression was equally dark. He looked up to the sky and sighed. Let's go. Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage and Lu Yuan both turned to look at him. The Zhangtian Daojian, on the other hand, trembled in the air and turned to leave. A long sigh came from the sword as well, filled with endless regret. I know you are all unwilling, and I am even more so. But we must leave now. The master of the celestial gate has given us this treasure. We have no chance left. Yuao Dragon King said dejectedly. For against 4, we no longer have the upper hand. Once they refine the treasures, their strength will increase. If we fight them again, we will be at an even greater disadvantage. The dragon race's pride made it hard for him to accept that they had to leave without any results. Not to mention, they were the ones who had suffered a great loss. Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage fell silent. He understood Yuao Dragon King's meaning. The Zhangtian Daojian had chosen to leave, and he had no choice but to leave. Otherwise, he would only be humiliating himself. His expression was cold. Xianmen Tianzong, Xianmen Tianzong, Xianmen Tianzong. I will remember this name. The next time I see anyone from Xianmen Tianzong, I will devour them regardless of their cultivation. Lu Yuan's expression was unsightly as well, and he stared fixedly at the jet-black mountain and the numerous chains that restrained it. In the end, he could only leave helplessly while cursing incessantly in his heart. You two kids better not fall into my hands, otherwise, I'll definitely skin the two of you alive. The 3 demons were furious, but there was nothing they could do. They could only leave. But soon, they discovered something even more infuriating. The wondrous Shaluo tree's dark golden light enveloped the entire foreign dimension, sealing it completely. Whether it was the tunnel to the endless wilderness magnetite mine in the monster realm, or the tunnel to the void battlefield, they were all blocked by the dark golden light. The Zhangtian Daojian, Lu Yuan, Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage, and Yuao Dragon King's heart sank. They finally realized that Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and the others did not summon the wondrous Shaluo tree to defend themselves. The celestial sect of Xianmen wanted to make them all stay. Because of Yuao Dragon King's injuries, Xianmen Tianzong and the others were not at a disadvantage. In fact, they had the upper hand. Even so, it would be extremely difficult to turn this advantage into a victory, let alone kill Yuao Dragon King and the other 3 experts. Of course, it would be even more difficult for Yuao Dragon King and Great Sage Lu Yuan to win. However, as long as they were willing to give up the treasures here and give up the idea of capturing Wang Lin and company, then it wouldn't be difficult for them to retreat. But now, Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao summoned the wondrous Shaluo tree to protect them while they refined the treasures. More importantly, it was to block the path of Yuao Dragon King, Lu Yuan, Ancestral Crocodile Great Sage, and Zhangtian Daojian. Once Wang Lin and the others finished refining the treasures, their strength would continue to grow. Then they would be able to expand their previous advantage and win the battle. Zhuge Zhan had some doubts at first, but once he understood this, he looked at Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao with a solemn gaze. The two of them are really ambitious. With such a disciple, it is not hard to imagine what kind of person the master of the Celestial Gate is. But they have guts and are crazy enough. I like it. Wanqiu did not become a disciple of Xianmen Tianzong in vain. Initially, Zhuge Zhan frowned at his daughter's near-death experience. If he had not coincidentally entered this foreign dimension, Zhuge Wanqiu and the others would have been in deep trouble against Yuao Dragon King. But now, it seemed that Xianmen Tianzong was well prepared. Although it looked like they were treading on thin ice, it was actually a close shave. This made Zhuge Zhan's impression of Xianmen Tianzong even better, especially after witnessing the strength displayed by Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao just now. Zhuge Zhan was even more impressed. 2 cultivators at the level of primordial spirit incarnation could have such powerful magical powers. How extraordinary! The master of Celestial Gate is indeed worthy of his reputation. Zhuge Zhan was in a good mood after noticing his daughter's cultivation foundation. Although his daughter had yet to form her golden core, her foundation was very solid. Her cultivation progress was far better than he had expected. This made him even happier. Zhuge Zhan was in a good mood, but Yuao Dragon King and the others were in a bad mood. They had forcefully tried to break through the miraculous Shaluo tree needles blockade, but were unable to succeed. This made them angry, and their hearts grew colder and colder. It's one thing to focus on defense, but it still has such strong defensive power when it's spread out to cover an entire foreign dimension. Isn't this treasure a little too powerful? Seeing that Wang Lin and Shi Tianhao were refining the treasures, Liu Yuan the Great and the others looked at each other, and suddenly turned around to attack Xianmen Tianzong and the others. Since they could not leave, they would fight it out. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.